want to welcome everyone to our regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors for this December 16th. If you'll stand with me, we'll be led in the pledge of allegiance by Supervisor Patel.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion to acknowledge certificate of posting. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 5-0. We now have some presentations and recognitions. Why don't we just start with Supervisor Botello and go down the...
Okay. Thank you. Can I have the Ag Commissioner Ron Ross join me at the podium, please? Good morning, Ron. Anyhow, today is a sad day for San Bernardino County in the fact that we have not only Ron Ross, but several of our key employees retiring at the end of the year. And I have the privilege of presenting this plaque to Ron, who's been our Ag Commissioner for 4 years?
5 years.
5 years, and been working for the county for 23 years. And Ron and I, we go quite a ways back, for years, probably yeah. And we've worked together not only here at the county, but when I was a employee for the city of Hollister as a fireman, and he was a paid call fireman for years, and so public service has always been the model for Ron. And it's a sad day that we're losing him as the Ag Commissioner, in the fact that it's probably one of the smoothest running departments we have, and you know, he's going to be very, very tough to replace. Everybody's replaceable, but Ron is one of the guys that I'm really sorry to see him retire. I don't think he should, but I guess there's other things in life besides work. So, Ron, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we want to wish you well and a very happy retirement, and we're very pleased that you're stay with us for a little bit on a part-time basis to help us out till we get somebody that could partially fill your shoes. So with that, I'll turn it over to you and congratulate you on this certificate of recognition.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. And when I take a look about, been here, actually it's been 26 years. It says 23 on the agenda, but I've been here 26 years. And a couple of years ago, somebody asked me, says, well, you've been at work for a long time. I mean, doesn't it get kind of routine and so forth? But, you know, fortunately with the department, the Agricultural Commissioner's Department, it's always, there's many programs that we do, and it's always changing. I mean, when I first came here, some of the things that we were doing then, we don't do anymore. And that's, as technology increases, let's say, for instance, on weights and measures, where it was primarily just checking the store scales and the cattle scales and the gas pumps and so forth. You know, now with technology, what we're doing is we're checking for accuracy and store scanners. And that opens up, that's a whole new world of some of the things that we do, is checking electronic weighmaster certificates that get printed out of remote locations, and a vehicle gets weighed miles away from where the transaction is being taken place. So it's been really interesting. It's been really challenging. And over the weekend, I was reviewing some stuff from our historical files. And the Agricultural Commissioner's Office has been around since 1889. When it was first formed, it was just ran by a board of commissioners. And in 1914, that's when the first commissioner was appointed. So, you know, I feel pretty proud that I'm actually the 8th commissioner, and then next year we'll have the 9th commissioner to serve San Bernardino County. So you take a look at how long we've been doing things. It's been maybe not as long as some departments, but we're probably one of the original departments when the county was formed. Some people ask me, well, gee, what are you going to do when you retire and so forth? Well, I'm not leaving. I'm going to be involved in the community organizations that I've been involved in. And actually, I was talking to Marty Richmond this morning. I said, I think the first thing I want to do is clean out my barn. I got years and years of accumulation of stuff in there. So anyway, I remain busy. But anyway, I'd like to thank the board for your support for the 5 years that I was agricultural commissioner, and also I'd like to thank my staff for making the whole thing work. And thank you very much.
Okay, we could have Nancy Vello come up to the podium. Is Nancy here? Hi, good morning, Nancy. It is an honor, but also with sadness, that I present this certificate of recognition to Nancy. Nancy has 22 years with the county, dedicated service to the county in one of the departments that really takes care of one of the most vulnerable population in our county, and that is children. She works in the child support branch as a child support branch manager, Department of Child Support Services. Nancy, thank you for your service. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we want to present you with this and wish you the very best in your retirement. And you may have the podium and say a few words.
I did not know that I was going to be speaking, so I don't have anything planned. I do want to say, however, that it's been a privilege to work for the Department of Child Support Services. We have a fabulous staff. I have no concerns with them moving forward without my leadership. Alicia Cardenas has been promoted to my position of branch manager, and I know that the staff will be in good hands under her direction. We also have the full support of Santa Cruz, who we are regionalized with. So I have, like I said, no concerns. It's been a privilege. I'm going to miss my staff tremendously, but this is a new chapter in my life, and I'm ready to go. So thank you all. Thank you.
Could I have Patrick Palancio come to the podium? You know, I can't ask Patrick to have a few words speak to the podium, because he'll probably be spending about 2 or 3 hours talking to us and lecturing us on how to run business. So I didn't want to say that at the end, but however, I have to show respect and allow him the opportunity to speak. But Patrick, it's an honor. I enjoy working with you, and I enjoyed your comments to the board during all your career here in San Bernardino County. And even when I see you out there, out in the environment that you work in, every time I will be talking to friends or be out there driving by, I can see Patrick with the full energy running into court and say, I got another one here, got another one here, got another one here. And that's the image, and that's the environment and the attitude that Patrick brings to his job. And I'm personally going to miss that, and the community's going to miss that. And Patrick, congratulations for serving the San Bernardino County for, I don't know why they put 7.8 years, but, you know, that's a technical thing. But I guess, you know, thank you for being a friend. Thank you for serving San Bernardino County. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say it's been a privilege to serve the people of San Bernardino County. I've loved this job more than any other job I've had in my life. I wish circumstances were such, state of the county, state of my office, that I could stay. But the best thing for me and my family right now is for me to retire, quote unquote. I won't be going far. I'm moving into defense. So I'll be doing criminal defense here in the county from now on. Some other counties too. And like I said, I wish circumstances were different and I could stay. But this is what's best. And I'm going to put everything I have into my new position, just like I did the old one. And I still think I'll be serving the people. Justice is justice. I'm just on the other side of what's justice now. And I'll just make sure that the people meet their burdens like they should. And we'll go from there. Thank you all very much. Oh, and I also want to say thanks to everybody that I've worked with at the DA's office. They're great staff, great attorneys, and I'm going to miss them very much, as well as all the law enforcement personnel that I worked with over the years. Thank you.
Wake up over there.
He's got coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, so it really is a pleasure to present this certificate of recognition in, it says 12.9 years, I think we'll round that up to 13 years, of service to San Benito County in Health and Human the Services Agency. I know you've done a fantastic job, and you're certainly going to be missed. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. We hope that you'll be still here in San Benito County. I'm sure that you will be, but here you go. Here's your certificate of recognition. You're more than welcome to say a few words.
Thank you. I really was just going to say thank you. I do want to thank you. And I've really enjoyed my time in San Benito County. I will be staying here. I'm going to be spending a lot of time helping my ailing parents. But I'm glad if I have to leave. The economy's on an upswing, and I see good things for the future of San Benito County. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one or two other plaques to be given out that I believe the people were not able to attend this morning, so staff will make sure those are given out. With that, we'll move on to public comment. This is an opportunity to address the board on items of interest not appearing on the agenda. No action may be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 54954.2. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes. First speaker is Marvin Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't mean to run everybody off. I want to thank you for the patience you've shown to me in the last year or so with some of the odd topics that I've spoken of every once in a while. I think today I just will take this opportunity, the last meeting of the year, to wish you a happy Hanukkah, which begins tonight at sunset. May your candles burn brightly. Christmas is coming up about a week or two away, and Merry Christmas, if that is your persuasion. Not to be overlooked, I think Hanukkah, Kwanzaa begins a day or two after that, and to everyone, a Happy New Year, and may it be prosperous for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Marty Richmond.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Marty Richmond from Hollister. First, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holiday, whatever. But I did want to, another year gone by, I did want to take a special minute to thank the staff of the county. I often spend a year bombarding them with questions, emails, telephone calls, asking for help in understanding the law and how we're doing things, and they've always cooperated, they've always explained it, they've always been patient and taken time out of their busy schedule to help me along, and I really appreciate it because they don't get credit. It's kind of behind the scenes. They don't come up here and say, I talked to Marty today for 15 minutes over this item. So I want to thank them. I also, at this time, just wanted to bring up that Assembly Member Alejo made a presentation yesterday at the city and spoke about a county water program. I'm not familiar with the program that we have to be a member of to get the millions and millions and millions of dollars they have put aside to help pay for the water, new water requirements in California that are available for grant money. But the grant money is only available from all these programs if we're a member of this water program. I'm not familiar with the program. I don't know if we are. It has to do with reporting groundwater to the state. So I wonder if you could put on a future agenda, ask the water folks here in the county whether or not we are a member of that group and what it would take to do that, because the current requirements for chromium fiber are probably going to cost us at least $5 million. It's already $175,000 just to look at it and see what our problem is. So as the state keeps pouring this on, we have to figure out a way to get the state money back to the local folks so that we don't have to absorb the entire cost. I appreciate you taking the time for that. And again, thanks to the staff for all the help they've given me.
Next speaker is Preston Artman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm here this morning, and my name is Preston Artman, and I'm requesting that a waiver of all the impact fees for my manufactured home at the address of 194 Comstock Road, Hollister, California, be waived. This home was on a temporary home permit, and I put this request for this building permit based on the following reasons. In the application process to the TMH permit, I met all of the county requirements. I also met all of the county health codes and requirements for water septic. This is a site plan. There's been a site plan filed and passed. There was also an EIR checklist completed and signed off on 5/01/1985. Due to the county giving me an assessment number on this building permit, I have paid property taxes for 29 years. This is all on county record. Please note that this home is on a permanent foundation due to the location of earthquake fault line. And this manufactured home is located on 190 Comstock Road. I bring this before the board and the chairman today to possibly put on the January agenda for consideration. Thank you for your time today, and happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd like to direct our CAO and county council to perhaps meet with Mr. Artman. And I have a bit of history. He's got some documents that he can share with you, and maybe do that before it is agendized to see if we need to proceed that way. So I have given him your number,
Okay.
and so he will be contacting
Okay.
you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any more speaker questions.
Would anyone else like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to department head announcements. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do have one announcement coming out of our office. It's coming out of our Public Works office. We have our interim Public Works Director here.
Yeah, this last gully washer we had, I'd like to thank the Public Works for a job well done on Southside Road. As I guess you know that we had a pretty good landslide down there. Had to close the school down for, I believe, 1 day, and they came in and cleaned it up. And also, I'd like to thank Public Works for doing a good job on Taylor Way, which runs down on my property, and did not run down there that bad, so my little lake took care of it. So I'd like to thank them for doing a good job. Thank you.
So to actually piggyback on that, I actually asked our Public Works Director to give us an update to the board as well as to the public of the roads and the status of the roads and actually what transpired during the storms. So we have our interim Public Works Director here, Joe Hordell.
Thank you. Staff was out busy Thursday night responding to the dramatic rainfall that we had, but we spent quite a bit of time pre that getting ready. There were a number of trees that were dead that we looked at around the county and we took down, trimmed. We did a lot of pothole patching kind of beforehand to make sure that the roads were as safe as possible, as well as our normal cleaning of inlets. Despite all that, the storm was quite a large one, and as you heard, we did have a number of landslides along Southside Road that we spent Thursday night and then most of Friday going through and clearing. We also did need to bring in an outside contractor because part of Southside Road right across from the Southside Elementary School washed away where a culvert had failed. And so they worked on Saturday and restored that, so that is now back. We are also out there this morning doing some additional work because the road continues to have some problems of just how it's been constructed over 100 years ago that we're trying to avoid more washouts, so that's occurring today. The damages itself, I think, are going to be under $25,000. So that was the amount we were able to sign for at a staff emergency kind of level in our negotiations with the contractor. We haven't seen the final invoices back, and so it's something we'll talk with Ray as that comes back. But it is one that I really want to thank Hank and his crew in being on top of that and really working through a cold, wet evening. And then as well as yesterday, we're back out in the rain again, making sure all that happened. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while we're all talking about a few of the roads, and this is something I was really planning on cornering you in private rather than, but while the thought crossed my mind, in my district, it's not any sort of emergency. The road crews did a fantastic job. I didn't receive not one phone call in District 2, which is terrific for the type of storm we had. And but Bixby Lane, between Freitas Road and 156, I just wonder if we should just shut that road down, put a couple of barricades across there and say, road is closed, because there's just no way that we could fill the potholes after every drizzle. And you can't keep up with it. And just close it for the winter, and people have other accesses. There's no homes that I don't think it services, maybe one. I take that back, just one. But if you took a look at it, or Hank, it's impossible to keep up. But maybe that's a solution for the county during the winter. Just shut down a road like that. And save the expense and wear and tear. Cars aren't going over those potholes and blowing them out again. Second thing, a compliment that I received from a constituent on Hudner Lane.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking care of that. They were very pleased, and so.
That was one of the ones we were out there before the storm trying to make sure it was
did a great
held
job.
together as best we could.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
That's all the announcements we have.
Okay, we'll move on to board announcements. Supervisor Rivas?
I have no announcements, Chair. I just want to wish everyone happy holidays and hope you guys have a fun and safe New Year.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's, and be safe and enjoy the moments with family members.
Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to report out that you and I are part of that Resource Recovery Park Committee. We met because we have a potential tenant for the Resource Recovery Park. So Chair Munzer and I met with Mandy and the potential tenant. A lot of interest in information, a lot of potential there, but there will be more to come, and I'm sure that we will keep you apprised of what's happening. As far as the homeless situation, we are moving along. I want to thank our director at HHSA. We have been moving very diligently, meeting every week, sometimes twice a week, to make sure that we address the situation with our homeless population. And right now, we are very seriously considering some sites, and they have been visited. We have asked our director at Public Works to bring us back some sort of a report that shows the potential properties, what it will take to get them ready for our service center. So we're moving right along. And I also want to say that a faith-based group had a luncheon for our homeless population at the new restaurant La Catrina, and this was on Sunday. Very well attended. Gifts were handed out. Thanks were given to them for being so cooperative with all the agencies so that we can get information from them so that we continue to try to help them. Very, very successful. So I think that we're going to have our service center, I'm hoping, in the very near future. And the last thing is I want to wish everybody and their families a safe and happy holiday and a very wonderful 2015.
Okay, thank you. I also want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I'm not sure about the other holidays that Mr. Jones mentioned, but everybody hopefully celebrates with their family and friends and the way they want to celebrate and have peace. Anyway, I do want to report that I attended a San Juan Neighborhood Watch meeting this week, and it was great to get together with folks that are concerned about public safety in their community. Got to speak a little bit about how the county and the city of San Juan partner with the sheriffs and how we hope to improve those services going forward into the next new year. And also the importance of the partnership that the county and the city of Hollister and the city of San Juan Bautista has with the fire department, and how ultimately that has improved how services are conveyed with the fire department. And so they were very pleased. We look forward to continuing those partnerships and improving what we provide to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yeah, yes, Supervisor Barrios, I was wondering on the report back to the board on the homeless progress report. My understanding is you're trying to find a permanent facility, and so can you guys come up with some type of matrix on the several locations? What are the benefits and advantages and disadvantages?
That's exactly what we have directed, and our Public Works Director do. There's been a lot of conversation, and yes, I think you're absolutely right. And keep in mind that that decision will be made by this board, but we will try to give you the best possible information that we can gather with the different sites, the different costs, the benefits, the disadvantages, all of that hopefully will come to you sometime. I really can't tell you when, because there's some work and detail that has to be looked at. So, and I think our CAO may have some information.
Yeah, we were discussing that at our last meeting that we had, and we were hoping to get it done in January. However, it's looking more like in February we'll come back to your board. But we're on a timeline because the grant is we have to do something. It's a 3-year grant that we have to perform, so we have to show half a payment within the half that time, a year and a half, something like that. So we really need to move forward, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So the sooner the better for us, and the sooner better for the public as well to know.
Yeah, if I could add too, I've been able to attend a few of the meetings, and that's just it. That's what we, what my understanding is that, evaluation of potential sites will be presented to this board, and we're going to make a decision as far as the best site and time to move forward, and so we could, resolve this very critical problem in our county. People are out on the street, no place to go, and they're suffering through the conditions that we have and so it's to be resolved. So it's pretty exciting.
It is.
So look forward to February to a progress report. Thank you. I want to report that I had the privilege of attending on December 6th at the San Benito County Historical Park a U.S. flag retirement ceremony done by a local Boy Scout troop. Devin Wright, as part of his Eagle Scout project, built a burn pit that the flags on retirement have to be burned, and he built a very nice burn pit at the historical park so that the Boy Scout will have a permanent place to retire any of our community flags that needs retiring. It was interesting. I learned a lot of stuff about how the flags are retired. And also, I just want to also wish everyone a happy and merry holiday season, whatever your religious and political affiliation is, and also wish everyone a blessed new year for the coming year. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. I've been asked to pull item 5, 15, and 16 by the board. Is there any speaker cards on the consent agenda? Would anyone from the public like to pull any item on the consent? Seeing none, what's the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll move to item number 5. Mr. Espinoza?
Yeah, I'm not sure who pulled this
Yeah,
up
I pulled
particular
that, and I'm looking at my notes.
Okay.
I noticed that this is a company from Rhode Island, and
Yeah.
what I'm just wondering, and I'm sure that this is probably the case, is this a very specialized company that really, like, one of a kind, that they're not any local companies that can provide the service that we are requesting here?
Yeah, these are actually special units that we've actually purchased. They're actually inline coolers, so the cooling systems, they're basically a rack or half a rack for one of the cooling systems. So they're built into the actual server racks themselves, and we have the server racks that are actually plexiglassed, so all the cooling actually goes through the front within the unit. They're contained cooling units for the green type of effect, so that way they're not cooling the entire room. So they're specialized products that we've actually purchased. It basically lowers the cost, the overall cost. Instead of having to cool the entire room, it's just cooling the equipment itself.
Okay, so they're products, so we would be doing the installation internally?
Well, the actual products, so this is basically a maintenance renewal for this particular product. We already have the equipment in place. We have, I think in this particular case, we have NOC 1, which is 5 racks, and we have 2 cooling systems cooling the entire rack. So the cooling actually goes in front of the servers, and then it gets penetrated through the servers, and then the exhaust comes out and goes out. So it's a specialized unit, and we have a specialized unit there, NOC 2, as well as the technology office. So they're specialized units.
All right, will you answer my question? And that's what I wanted to know, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yeah. Hey, Ray, is there a set times that they're going to come in, or because you have different rates, like for holidays and weekends and Monday through Friday?
Yeah, they're scheduled to come out on certain times, but when you have a maintenance agreement, if there's a failure, if there's an issue, they'll come out anytime to deal with it. And again, these are critical for the operations. We don't want to have thermal impacts on the servers, because that'll actually cause other problems down the road, and it can actually bring a complete server down, which would stop operations, which we don't want to have happen.
No, and I realize that it's a very critical, area that we need to make sure that it's properly maintained and
Yes.
that it doesn't overheat and all of that.
Right. And when we actually purchased these units, we purchased them, I think, was with a 5-year maintenance agreement. So that was kind of built in. We negotiated that. So now we're at that point now where we need to, keep investing into the maintenance of these units. So it's extremely important to keep those units cool. I've actually seen servers go down with thermal variation on the drives, and it takes a couple days to get them back up and running, which causes a lot of heartache and headache, and also cost to because you have employees that aren't working. So there's a lot of other costs that are associated with that if they do go down. So it's pretty important.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone from the audience that would like to address the board on this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
I will make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll move on to item number 15.
Okay, I'll go first. Joe, this goes back a couple of years, and I just want to understand the logic why we're moving it from, the contingency fees to the traffic impact fees, and also, I need to have my memory refreshed why we have it as a revolving fund, because it makes it sound like if they pay back down into the loan, that they could withdraw money for other additional capital improvements, and I don't think that was part of the deal.
Correct. So a little bit of history, and definitely this predates me, but Melinda's here, and I think Linda was popping over to help with a little bit of the history if I don't have it all. So going back, first, the state allows for CSAs up to $2 million revolving loans for individual CSAs, recognizing that there are major capital types of investments that happen from time to time. In this case, building a well, which was about $1.5 million project. At the time we were working in building this project, we went through and worked with the homeowners on raising their CSA rates to cover that. We didn't go through all the proper process. As it turned out, there was some litigation. We went back through that process, and ultimately the homeowners agreed to pay a payment that I think it's about $2,500 per property that's paying on a 10-year basis back for this well. In this case, the county is acting as the bank. So we went through and said we would pledge some of our assets to allow the contract for the well to be paid. That has been paid. And in doing that, the board had adopted a policy that said that we would establish a contingency reserve to do these kinds of things. What happened, and this is the part where I may need Melinda to help, but I'll take a first crack at it, was we used ending fund balance rather than contingency reserve to actually pay the bill. And so it's one of those things that, just like if I have extra overtime or I ran over my budget on something, we settle the books on a whole bunch of funds every year at the end of the fiscal year and then start the new year clean. That because we didn't go through and actually establish a $2 million or whatever amount contingency reserve, we started on that path but never finished that. We just dealt with it through this ending fund balance. And so as staff, what we've been trying to do is essentially bring those dollars back into the general fund rather than going and having them sit off and not be able to use for 10 years. We looked at what other sources of funds are available that could play bank. And in this case, we identified the traffic impact fee as a source of those dollars. And so it's, we're going to use dollars that we've collected that we're essentially going to pay back. We're collecting interest, the same interest rate that those traffic impact fee dollars today are getting in the county funds.
Now, that interest, is that interest going back to the general fund?
It goes into the traffic impact fee.
It goes back into traffic
So
impact
in this
fees.
case, though, we're going to be paying back, and the original loan was that the general fund would collect interest also on those payments, the same internal rate we use for excess dollars. So from that standpoint, the dollars are all even. What we're trying to do is to actually free up dollars. It'd be one-time dollars, but free up one-time general fund dollars that could be put back into the county's budget to, deal with other priorities.
Yeah, I think I understand that. So,
and then your second question was, does this in fact create a checkbook that CSA 31 can go through and tap on? No, is that the board went through and approved this project, which was the well project. They had established a 10-year payback, and I think we've got about 7 more years left on that. And that is the loan. So it's like going to the bank where you would go through and be pre-approved for something, or the bank would says, we're willing to make loans to homeowners, but you still got to go through for each individual loan. And so it is not a standing, open-ended forever. It's 7 years. When it's paid off, that goes away. They can't go through and pay it faster off and then say, well, we want to go through and do something different. It's for that specific activity.
all right, so if I understand the finances correctly, we, in 2011, we lent CSA 31 $1.4 million.
We use general fund money to
general
go
fund contingency.
to play bank. Now, I think what we're still sorting out is, was it contingency reserve or was it ending fund balance? I think it's turned out to be ending fund balance versus reserve, but from this, in some ways, it's really a bookkeeping exercise rather than dollars. They were general fund dollars that were used for that, and so
All
we're
right.
bringing them back.
And so in 2015, I'll call it 2015, we're at the end of 14, but, so instead of using those funds, we're go to the traffic impact reserves.
Right.
And lend a CSA 31, roughly $1 million, because they paid back a half.
Right, and well, yeah,
100,000.
so it's whatever's, there's about $1 million of unpaid debt in that project. So it's kind of the analogy as a homeowner. If you had a loan through Wells Fargo and you were refinancing with B of A, you know, you still have the same house. It's just, instead of the money coming out of Wells Fargo now, it's freed up and now it's coming out of B of A.
Yeah, I've had my loans do that before, too. So.
The homeowners won't see a difference, because we're dealing with on the backside.
Anyhow, I guess that, as long as it's clear that, you know, they just can't, we have another
Right.
capital improvement need, they have to start building up their own capital reserves like every other CSA that we have that formula for, and pay back the county's funds, because $3 million in our traffic impact, you know, I don't know where we're pay for, you know, some of the highway projects that we have.
Right, it does, from that end of it, it does mean that there's some projects that, you know, were planned 5 years from now, they're 7 years. So it does have that. We went through and didn't spend dollars we were going to spend next year or the year after. But it does mean that we're freezing those dollars unless we move it to some other point. At this point, we didn't see a project where we were ready to go through and spend it in that time frame, but it does put that restriction on it, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Santa Cruz?
Yeah, thank you. I also pulled it off, and the Supervisor Batalla answered, he asked most of my questions too. But I also have two additional questions, and the first one is, I guess, I mean, where's Joe Paul? He's not here, but is it fair and is it a fair balance that you have one CSA that's, I don't know if they're actually doing it or not, but they're borrowing money to do their own project at a higher interest rate, whereas we're giving CSA 31 the best interest available.
Right.
And is that a fair concept of financing now?
I
compared
think
to
that's an
other
absolutely
CSAs?
fair question to ask, and it's one of the things I think part of the heartburn the board has had, as I understand, about CSAs is just how they've operated over the years, and at the end of the day, we have this obligation that, you know, we kind of get stuck with if things blow up, and we saw that with the 218 votes.
And that leads to my next question, and that is that, are we now becoming a quasi-San Benito bank now? Because I don't think we're in the business of lending out money. I mean, that's the last, when I read our mission statement is not to be a bank and assume risk. And I know, you know, that might actually be an oxymoron statement because there's a relationship of CSAs. We have the ability to, from the process of 218. But yet again, what if? Are you willing to assume all our free cash or liquidity to fund other CSAs project? And all of a sudden, something happens. You know, Congress comes in and says, boom, that's your problem now. I mean,
Right.
we are now assuming more risk that we had no risk before this transaction.
And I think that's a part of a conversation we'll have later today about the CFD formations and goals and policies. I think that's part of the challenge with CSAs is having good enough policy direction from the board of those exact type issues. Is where is it our role to step in and assist versus we're just there as a service provider.
Right.
And,
And that-
those are very different.
Yeah, that leads up to my final question. What is, are we now entering new territory aspect of financing?
Well, I don't think we are in that the board, the county already financed this project several years ago.
Yeah.
So the question is, are there some things in hindsight that maybe we should think about before we do it again? I can tell you there are some other CSAs that they voted down the 218 process, and they have some capital costs that are
Well,
coming up
I mean,
with their sewer
you
systems.
just added risk right now.
And that's the piece that actually I would like to talk with the board in the new year is
Yeah.
how we go through and deal with that and what is our policy going to be on pushing back with some of those homeowners, property owners of, this is really your responsibility, you're making a decision to not pay for things, and it's not a responsibility of the county's residents overall to pay for.
I was a water board director one time. The gentleman, he passed away, but ask him how he felt about small mutual water companies, how they go bankrupt real fast. And
No,
who ends
it's
up
exactly
picking
it.
up the
Those
cost?
small, special kind of funded districts like that, that's really one of the challenges that we face is these little subdivisions scattered around is over the long term, their ability to actually sustain themselves, I think is something we need to think about.
And maybe I'm speaking online, and maybe that it's our job to assume final risk for all CSAs and all other types of organizations. Maybe that's our responsibility. I don't know the answer to that question.
I think it's a larger conversation
Yeah.
we should have in 2015.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, just for us to remember that the reason, this was an isolated case. This was almost an emergency situation where these folks were really suffering without water. And it was our responsibility to do something to address the problem. And this was, we found that this was the best way to do it. And I think that it was a good move.
And the residents voted to pay for this, so that
Yes.
is the other piece. We did not incur, the cost to drill a well without the residents themselves voting to actually pay for this. So there is risk management that actually has been all the way through this, that the county staff has been very attentive to.
Yeah, and they took the risk themselves
Yeah.
to be, and it's through their property taxes, so we're getting reimbursed. But I think we made the right move then, and I don't regret having helped them out in that very serious situation.
Well, I guess, Mr. Chair, with all due respect to Supervisor Barrios, can you give us a report, a status financial report within 15 minutes on the first project that we did for the CSA 31?
I'm sorry.
Can you give us an update status? Where's the money's at? Where it come from? Where is it at right now? Can you spit it out in 15 minutes?
15 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, we have a system that you press a button, a report comes out.
You want to grab that one, Melinda?
Melinda, I've asked actually Melinda to do some work on this particular item.
I mean,
to actually prepare the
I
financial
guess I'll
side,
say it,
so-
I put you on the spot, but.
No, and we're prepared for that. Melinda actually has done some work. I asked her to do that, so she'll give you I don't know if it's 15 minutes, but.
Okay, so what was your question again? Where's the funding coming from?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was more of a put you on the spot question, but you don't have to answer the question.
Well, I think ultimately, Melinda's actually created for us, or for me, a project timeline of what's actually transpired with this particular item. So the project actually got started in 08-09. Project was funded. CSA fund debt retirement fees collected, started revenues have been collected each year of approximately a total of $846,000, and $268,000 has been transferred from the CSA fund to project fund. Going kind of back, 12/16/08, the board approved the revolving loan fund from county reserves for the project of $1.4 million. 02/08/11, so 28/11, Board of Supervisors item to establish a general fund contingency adjustment transfer of $454,000. That was what I had actually asked Melinda to look at and to evaluate what actually was what actually happened though internally, the actual financing side, the accounting side internally. So she can elaborate a little bit more on that after. Total expenditures since 08-09 to fiscal year 13-14, $1.5 million. Cash as of 6/30/2014, negative $1.25 million. And again, the items cancels the general fund responsibility. This particular item, the item that we have before us today, cancels the general fund responsibility and uses traffic impact fees as a loan account. So it kind of gives you kind of a quick highlight of what transpired since the inception of this particular project. But Melinda can probably elaborate a little bit further. Melinda?
Melinda, before you start, I just want to make sure that the board is clear that all this that transacted, this board discussed it. We voted on it and approved it in February of 2011. And this action today is simply taking money out of one of our pockets and putting it back into another pocket.
Right.
So just as long as everybody's clear on that, then with that, go ahead, Melinda.
So I think that the process is working correctly. It's just not all, it just hasn't all been tied up real nice and neat. And so this is, as Joe put it, this is just a mortgage from Wells Fargo paying your house and to Bank of America paying your house. Everything's there. It's just kind of moving the responsibility off of the general fund into the traffic impact fund so that the general fund's finances aren't tied up. That behind the scenes, everything seems to be working. We're just transferring the liability from one account to another account.
And may I ask a question in regards to that? And this, we can do this again. We can actually move it, refinance it if we have to,
Right,
so to speak.
right.
We need to free up the traffic impact fee funds, and we've got funds in the Habitat Conservation Fund. We may do this again.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So it's just a loan, and everything seems to be working properly. The homeowners are paying the county. They set up the CSA payments and stuff. So it's just a transfer of financing.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, so Melinda, so it's giving you the ability to use those funds. It's giving you the ability to use those funds to balance any future budget, right? Whereas if those general funds were still tied to this project Stonewall, then you couldn't use those funds for any given budget year, correct? Is that really what it is?
Correct. It's just
Yeah.
for that one project.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Any other questions of the board? Anybody from the public like to address?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Pat Lowe, and I just have a couple questions. It was really hard understanding when I read the staff report exactly what was going on, and obviously from your conversation this morning, I wasn't the only one that was a little confused. What I understood was that the maximum that can be borrowed from any impact fee account is $2 million. So when it started out, it was like 1.4, and now it's another 900,000. No, okay, that's where I'm off. But they have already paid back X amount of dollars. So you're going to stay under the 2 million.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other part of that equation, though, is the interest. And I know from reading the document, I found in different places it said interest could be charged, but I could not find anywhere where it actually spelled out the amount of interest, what account it was going back to. And I really think that that needs to be in some document. Maybe it is, and maybe it just wasn't in the packet. But we all know 10 years from now when could be a new board sitting here and the back row is going to be gone, and nobody's going to remember exactly what happened.
Oh, I hope not.
I'm gone from this meeting room because they'll have some other better place to be on Tuesday mornings. But, I think it just really needs to be spelled out because we all know that it's really hard going back after 10 years and people remembering what was said. And to try and translate, it's hard. It needs to be spelled out. And, the third point is, and I know you know this, you've obviously really wrestled with this decision, but this is a real slippery slope we're going down here. When you start taking money that was put into an account by developers to use for something else. This is actually developers' money that's sitting in this account. And now it's being taken out and put somewhere else. And is this step one, just like Supervisor Delacruz was saying, is this step one of a place that we really don't want to go? But if somebody could answer the question on the interest, and is it spelled out somewhere?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yeah, it is spelled out, and Pat, if I remember correctly, it is whatever the pool of money that the county is earning, that we will not charge any more than that. So I believe we average it, Barbara, and you can answer that. But
Yes.
yes, it was spelled out.
It was set out in the original loan document. I think it's set out in the resolution that's cited here, 2011-16. When it was originally, the loan was originally approved, there's a methodology for calculating the interest. This code section 25214.5 specifies that we can charge interest not to exceed the amount that we earn on our temporary idle funds. And what we did, from my recollection, is the auditor's office determines what the interest rate is for like 12, 13, and that's the interest rate that's calculated the following year, that they do it like a year in arrears, but they determine what the interest rate that the county funds would have earned during that time period, and then they calculate that interest rate in. So they do calculate the interest rate that's earned by the county funds into the amount that has to be repaid.
And then may I answer Pat's question on your concern about having done this? We have to remember, these folks had no water. They were bringing in water from who knows where. They were in dire straits.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
I
and we
understand that.
did. We took that decision very seriously. We talked at length. We looked at all the possibilities, and that was like the best solution we could come up with to help them out. So yeah, it's not something we do often, but in this situation, we really needed to step up to the plate.
All right, but that goes, what Barbara just read is my question, really, because it said the interest could be charged. Is there a document somewhere that says it will be charged at this rate?
Yes, there was a document that said,
Okay.
and we approved it as a board, that we would charge that interest. Because, yeah, otherwise we'd be losing county money that really we should not be gifting to anyone. We needed to get that money back, and so yes, to answer your question, we did do that.
All right.
Supervisor,
You know, that's one of the things with this item I kind of was looking for was maybe a scheduled repayment of the loan, principal, interest. I I don't know if it's year by year or month by month, but you know, I think that's important that we see that schedule.
So we include that when we do the yearly budget because we set the yearly rates, and so it shows up in that document, and we just neglected to put it in the staff report, so I apologize for that, but it is something we calc every year that shows that.
Yeah, and this coming July or June, whenever we do the budget, maybe that has to be somewhat spelled out, and when we do the CSA budgets, and, well, this loan is out there. This is the schedule, the interest, and which account it's going from. How did we decide to choose the traffic impact fee account, and what's changed where we couldn't use the money that we were using before? Just what spurred that on?
Well, part of it, I would say, is good money management, is that general fund is, since it is the most precious of dollars available to an agency, is, you know, how to go through and meet our needs, and tying up general fund dollars on a well project, you know, from a staff standpoint, we didn't think really made sense. And so we started looking at what were other places where we had dollars that were sitting in the bank that would be a logical place to, you know, replace those with. You know, as Supervisor Barrios noted, it is one that in the later, you know, 2-3 years from now, if we want to go through and move it into another spot, if there's another fund within the county that makes more sense, you know, we have the ability to do that. But it's really, we thought it was much more important to free up general fund dollars as we go, and kind of starting to reset the priorities in the county of what are our services and where we're going to invest, to put a little bit, you know, to be able to seed that a bit.
Okay.
And Joe, just to add to that, that account, that impact fee fund will be made whole. You know,
Absolutely.
So there's no way that we're not going to get this replenished.
With
so to
interest.
speak. Because former Supervisor Patlow is correct. You know, this is money that was collected from developers, and it's wholly.
It's obligated to be
It's
spent in
obligated.
those purposes, or we have
Yeah.
to give it back.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. Joe, so you're basically matching available funds with when the time comes for expenditures.
Yeah, it's kind of, you're just looking at cash flow across the
Yeah.
county organization, and, you know, where can we get the best return this year? And this, we thought, made sense.
Okay, and former Supervisor Lowe, I enjoy your Christmas sweaters. Every year when you're on this board, you enlighten the board during this time. Thank you for continuing that tradition.
and one comment, I just want to make sure, Pat, that you understood, this money is not going to the CSA. It's just being moved within our own funds. Okay, just want to make it, I think that was your first question, was how come they're getting more money, or are they going over the maximum amount that can be loaned to them? None of this, because that was my first thought when I saw this item also. You know, why are we giving them more money? And they're not getting any more money. It's just moving money from one of our funds to another one of our funds. Okay. Okay. We have any other speakers on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I'll try not to repeat former Supervisor Lowe, not ex-supervisor, and I are not in collusion on this. She had several of the same questions, so I won't repeat her questions, but I have another one. Since we are going over this now, I am lost on the cost. We keep talking about a $1.4 million loan, and then now we're talking about a $2 million loan. What am I missing here? Why is it is that just an aside? Are we whispering? Okay, we're lending him 1.4, but 2 million is the maximum, or are we lending him more money?
No, we're not loaning them any more money. The former Supervisor Lowe brought up the point that the maximum is 2 million that can be loaned to a CSA. No additional money is going to the CSA. Their project is done. They're paying it back. They actually started paying it back before the project was even done. And they started questioning, why are we paying this money back? We don't even have the well yet. So they've been paying back as they were supposed to. What we're trying to do is move some extra money into our general fund contingency.
So the sentence on the support document in your agenda packet that says the maximum that can be loaned is 2 million was just a comment.
Correct.
Okay, well, I think that's the one that confused everybody, because that comment, as a comment, looked like it was a change of the loan thing. Thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to address the board on this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for staff recommendation.
I second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 5-0. And I believe item 16 was also pulled. Was that?
I guess I pulled that. Sorry, Joe.
Close by.
You know, what I don't understand, we transferred the highway.
Right.
And they're saying that we're still responsible for trees, and I might have read the other part of this item a little wrong,
Right.
and you could correct me. Possible graffiti and maybe a little bit of garbage alongside of the roadway that we're still responsible to pick up and maintain.
So as a part of the agreement, so there's a three-way agreement between the city, the county, and Caltrans, and the majority of the relinquishment area is within the city of Hollister, and that's where the sidewalks are located, the traffic signals and traffic lights. So our agreement with Caltrans is much narrower than what Hollister's is. So they do have issues potentially with graffiti on the sound walls and things like that, that there were agreement pieces. Ours deals with if we go through and plant trees in the future or plant landscaping, that Caltrans is saying they are not responsible for maintaining it, watering it, or damage caused by those. So they basically accepted it as it is today and said they would maintain it as it is today.
And it's, all right, so we're not going to incur any more costs.
Unless we incur costs to plant things, we don't incur more
I don't
costs.
see us doing that. Okay, that's fine, I guess, but I saw that and I thought, well, heck, that's their roadway. They're in, you know, how in the world are we going to take care of that?
Well, it's the importance of negotiating with them early on with improvement projects like this, in that, you know, as we go through and work on other highway projects, those are just you know, the state has the same problems we have of maintenance, and so I think just, we need to be eyes wide open as we, you know, work on other future projects like Highway 25 or things like that down the road, that they would like to push some of those costs our way.
All right. I'm done.
Supervisor Barris?
Joe, I didn't see any mention of the city, but you said that the city does have some responsibility. Is the agreement between us and the city to share some of this responsibility, or is it between the city and the state, and there's two different MOUs?
Two separate agreements, but they mirror each other. So everything that's in the city of Hollister, they have the responsibility for electricity or maintenance. And if it's in the county's jurisdiction, then we would have that responsibility.
Okay, there's no partnering then between the city and the county? I mean,
No, not that I'm
Street,
aware.
it's county?
Not that I'm aware of. We did some staff maintenance agreements in the past for like sound wall maintenance, but it's, you know, that was more contractual versus cost sharing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anyone from the public like to address the board on this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve it.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. With that, we will move on to our public hearing. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're on item number 17 this morning, and this particular item is going to be coming out of our Health and Human Services Department. We have our Health and Human Services Director, James Riding Sword, here to present this particular item. It's to consider the adoption of an ordinance to amend Ordinance 919, the Emergency Medical Services Fees Ordinance, adopt ordinance establishing a revised fee schedule for emergency medical services, and direct the clerk of the board within 15 days to publish a post-adoption summary of the ordinance pursuant of Government Code Section 25124B. So, Jim?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So under the contract that you signed earlier this year with AMR, there's a provision for an increase of fees. It's Section 9.3, and that is what you will be acting on today. The impact of these fees, as I understand it, is that they will be applied to, you know, whatever billing they're doing. However, if they're billing, for example, Medi-Cal, there's an agreement, they accept the Medi-Cal rate, and there's no more billing to that client. Same thing with various kinds of health insurance. And if you're somebody who doesn't have anything, which in today's world, I don't understand why you wouldn't have health insurance. But if you don't have anything, then these fees would be part of a bill that would be sent to you. So basically, you are acting on provision 9.3 today, which was an agreed item in the contract that you signed earlier this year.
Any questions of the board?
Mr. Chair, Jim, I know we're here to set policies and not to express our personal interest on this matter, but I'm going to because I just got the bill from these guys a couple days ago for my daughter. There was a situation. It was over $3,000 for them to transfer my daughter 1 mile to Hazel Hawkins. $3,000. And I'm telling you, and I'm sharing it with the community just to tell you how expensive it is to use to call these EMR people. It's like, wow. It was great. And I'm still going to bill it to my insurance, and I'm willing to bet eventually I'm probably going to have to pay $600 out of my pocket. But it's just crazy. Medical costs is just getting out of control.
Well, your personal comments are well taken.
Jesus.
The cost of health insurance, the cost of going to the doctor or going to the hospital continues to increase in this country and in our county, and it is not an inexpensive issue. That's why people, in my view, should seek the best coverage that they can get.
Just two things that I just need to point out, Jim. There, I believe it should be state statute instead of state statute.
Okay.
So that needs to be corrected, and then the chair would have to be changed from Mr. Vitello, Supervisor Vitello to Supervisor Munzer.
Yes.
So those are the only two changes on
Yes.
the ordinance itself.
Yes.
Spell check.
Spell check.
Any other questions of the board? Seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing.
Yeah, they got you on here.
I'll be darned.
To sign.
Marty Richmond, since the subject came up because of Supervisor Dela Cruz's comment, I'd like to just fill in on something. People should realize that Hazel Hawkins Hospital, excuse me, does not have a trauma center. And so if you get in a bad automobile accident and you need a trauma center, you may start at Hazel Hawkins Hospital, but you will be immediately transferred to a hospital with a trauma center. And that'll probably be done to save your life by air, and that's going to, if you think $3,000 is a lot of money, wait till you see the bill for the air transport. You can avoid the bill for the air transport if you would join CalSTAR by paying a family fee once a year. It's a modest fee. I think it's $50, something in that neighborhood. Don't quote me on that. Check with CalSTAR. And they also have a arrangement with the other air services that many of them recognize the other air services fee. So even if you're not in a CalSTAR area and you need air services, you can get it either at an enormously reduced rate or free. And so you will get a CalSTAR card, and you get a little sticker to put on your car, a card to carry in your wallet, a little sticker to put on your car, and they will automatically renew that every year on your credit card. And this is a good investment for people. I know everybody thinks it won't happen to them, but it happens to somebody, and that will reduce the cost enormously, or you're going to see a $25,000 or $30,000 bill for airlifting you to a trauma center or a member of your family. So I am a member, and I recommend for people who can afford it that they buy a membership in CalSTAR or Associated. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry to go on like that.
One comment?
Yes, Jim.
Appreciate the comments. I do understand that there is discussion going on about working through Hazel Hawkins to begin to establish some level of a trauma center in San Benito County. That's what I've been informed.
Do we have any other speaker cards for this item? Would anybody else like to address the board on this item before I close the public hearing? Seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing. If the board has no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve per staff recommendation the new fees as shown in attachment A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Boy,
Passes.
you're really upset about that $3,000.
Oh, absolutely.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
With that, we're ready to move on to our regular agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're on our regular agenda this morning, item number 18. And this particular item came from your board. Actually, it came from Supervisor Robert Rivas. He had requested to give a report back to the board. So this morning, we have our fire chief here, Chief O'Connor, here to give your board, as well as the public, kind of an update of where we're at with the contract, discuss our scope of services, the calls, as well as an update with regards to our fire station. So we also have Joe Horadell here as well to discuss any updates with our new station that we're actually working on currently for Fire Station 3. So again, we have Mike O'Connor here. Mike?
Warm up. Take a 2-minute break.
Janet, do we want to take a 5 or 10 minute break at this point?
You want to take a few minutes?
We'll take a 5 or 10 minute break.
Sounds good.
They're okay with this?
We're paying on the flat. It doesn't matter. I'll put them at the end. Sure, yeah, that would probably be fine. Yeah, you don't have a copy of the... Yeah, probably right there would be fine. Yeah, right here. Right here, probably.
This morning you were on a call. In between then?
Taking a break?
Yeah, 5-minute break.
Hey, you gotta talk to the camera people. They're gonna yell at you if they can't see the easel on the TV. Or grab the camera operator. Ask him, where's the best place?
I recommend it.
Is it?
It's hard to see it on overhead. And I think it's hard for people to see it.
The new owners. Well, we certainly need reason.
I've heard all this already. You don't mind my saying this, this is the same as you tell us at the committee, right?
Public hospital, I guess, is that's my guess.
They wanted it there, but I was wondering whether over there with the camera on capture it.
Yeah, probably next to the podium would be the best spot. I mean, I only have this camera, and it would be on him speaking. So probably.
Okay.
They always call and say, you know,
I don't know how that's going to be.
It's going to be cutting your way.
It's off my disc. Off my She said over here.
Well, actually,
You want it behind me?
I think they prefer it over here.
But that's
Yeah.
I don't. Is that going to cause you a problem with your overhead slide? We don't need it. It's good. There's a slide with this on it. Okay. That's the whole thing. It's more if anybody wants to look at it. How about over here by the window? If you're standing actually right here, then it's going to be sitting right next to you from that camera over there. Okay. You got it. Thanks. And you can still see that this is not going to be blocked? Actually, I have this coming in on the separate feed, so it's not that big. Okay. You got it. Okay. Thank you very much. Sounds good to me.
Hey, you decided to take a break.
Are we ready?
Decided to take a break?
Yeah.
No, just. Just joking, just joking. It's just joking.
I already went and tacked that fudge. I did.
Well, then, okay.
Is that what you showed me?
Yeah, it's like you better get it that fudge.
Today, which is not a big deal, but you know, I went to she, my daughter's coming in Monday with her husband, and I said, oh, and so, you know, it's like, you're gonna be ready. But you know what, once in a year, you just go with it.
Like bags of chocolate chip, anything of that sort. If they're closed and sealed, they won't.
Oh,
Once they
man.
find them open though,
Glad.
it's fair game. That was, as far as I'm concerned, that was open because you got into it.
The mayor's the chair, right?
What's
The
that?
chair.
Jerry.
Jerry, it's the chair. Yeah, it's the chair. I know, it's not here. The chair.
What's that?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Because it's mayor.
Mayor, right.
No, that's it. No, we don't have that.
Yeah, vice chair.
Yeah, vice chair. It's Margie this year.
We have the names.
Oh, yeah.
You should put up there, vice chair.
Well, see, it would cost money to change the block.
You guys got lots of money, come on now.
Well, now we got another $1 million we just transferred.
Yeah, it's, trust me, it's just smooth.
Yeah, it's a show.
Yeah, it is. You didn't get any more money, trust me.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will, yeah. I will.
You guys keep on coming and going. So you keep on coming and going there. Ooh. You can see the
Okay.
stacks.
Anthony.
Okay. Ready to go? Mike?
Okay,
Go
yes.
ahead.
Good morning, Board and Chairman Munzer. Thank you for this opportunity to present Hollister Fire Department. You contracted with it approximately 18 months ago. This is the first full year that we've been your contract department, and I'll present some information that was given to you approximately 18 months ago, and then I'll go into where the department is today, and what we've provided the services we provided for you. The contents that we will cover is the scope of services that we are providing, the information about the department, the equipment that we received from you and where it's been placed and how it's been placed, the current staffing, the planned staffing and the increase in that staffing over the contract, the compensation for services, the amount that you've contracted are invoiced each year, and then the station locations, the areas that we've designated those response areas, and then the grants that we received in any summary at that time. The contract, the duration of the contract, it was a 2-year contract that we entered into. We entered it on July 1st, 2013. We actually started the contract about 2 weeks early due to the rally and some other stuff to try to get the transition a little bit smooth before we were inundated with visitors from out of our area. The contract, like I said, was 2 years. It expires, well, it doesn't expire. It renews automatically every year, but if you want to cancel it or whatever, it would expire on June 30th, 2015. But like I said, if none of the parties wants to cancel, there's no changes to be made, it automatically renews each year. If you do want to cancel it 6 months in advance, you need to notify the parties. When we entered into the contract, we were asked to be an all-risk department. Part of that is providing services not just for structure and medical, but for all types of calls, vehicle accidents, hazardous materials, trench rescues, any special rescues. You also asked us to provide prevention, which wasn't being provided completely before. So we have a fire marshal. That person's job expanded. You also asked us to give you an outreach program to try to work with the citizens in the community. So we developed a CERT program. We also developed our Explorer posts for the youth to get them involved in the fire service and give them alternatives after school hours. So they come over and learn about the fire service. We also work with the Fire Safe Council and other organizations trying to bring fire prevention to the community. Before the contract, there was a single engine ran out of the Fairview station staffed with 2-0 staffing, which is 2-person staffing. They had additional engines out there, a grass rig, pickup, and water tender. They also were allowed to have up to 25 volunteers. At the time, the consolidation, there were 19 volunteers. After the contract was entered into, we reorganized. We looked at what equipment needed to be placed and what equipment we needed. We decided to develop 4 stations, and we staffed up the 4 engines, and I'll show you later in that. But we provided all the personnel for those engines, 2 admin captains, and 2 chief officers. And you can see the list of equipment that is now part of the resources. We have additional equipment like the MCI air light unit that was developed this last year. We have a hazmat trailer. It's only for decon, but hopefully it will develop into somewhere down the road a team. Now that we have more personnel that we can actually probably staff up a team. And then we also have a new rescue trailer that we can do trench rescue, and it's being developed to do building collapse, anything of that nature. And we also have the 2 reserve engines in case our frontline engines go out of service. The current protection for the county is 4 engines. Those are staffed up to 4-0 staffing or 4-person staffing. Engine 14 is a reserve-driven station, but if there are no reserves signing up, we move staffing from one of the other stations over there to cover it. There will always be staffing at all 4 stations. The daily staffing, if everybody's there, and no one's sick or at class or On vacation is 14, and you have a reserve staff of 38 that are available by pager, and when they're alerted, they respond to the station to cover the stations. Also, our off-duty personnel can come, and we have 40 paid personnel that also come from off-duty and respond back to the station to cover. So that's on top of the 38. The incidents that we responded to. In 2013, 6 months of it, we were each individual departments. We combined, consolidated, thanks to you guys signing the contract. That year, there were 3,449 calls. This year, we're expected to, well, we are right now at current date, 3,644 calls countywide. We're reaching a 7-minute response time to 90% of those calls. It's kind of hard to compare because I'm just going to use the example of Station 2. If you took their average response time before, about 4 to 5 minutes, but now you add a call to Pinoche into that district because that's one of their stations, it looks like their response time went up, but it didn't. That response time's same. If they go to Pinoche, we move an engine into Station 2, those people have the same service they've always had, and vice versa. It's actually reduced the response times in most of the areas, especially the west side station, which is out of San Juan, and now responds immediately to those calls, and their response times are a lot greater, or a lot better in that area. And we have the backup engines to cover. Some of the programs we started, like I said, was the Explorer Post. Let's see if I'm doing, yeah, that's right. Okay, so Engine 11, like I said, was staffed up to 4 personnel. It's our headquarters station. Station 2, and I was asked to make sure everybody knew where the stations were in districts. Station 2 is located off of Union Road. It's also staffed with up to 4. And Station 13 is our north station. That's in District 1. And it is not there at this time. It will be placed there, and I have slides later showing that. And then Station 4, or Engine 14, is located in San Juan. It's the west side station. The additional equipment is staffed by off-duty and reserve personnel, or people could be moved over from on duty to take out the water tender to a call if needed, or an air unit. CAL FIRE remains in the county. They staff their stations during the season. Their dozers and air tankers are still located here out of our airport. Before the contract, prior to the contract signing, this is basically the service you had in the county. You had 2 engines out of the city of Hollister, and you had a county engine, and then the volunteers in San Juan. We swore in all the new personnel under the department. We promoted those that need to be promoted to positions to staff up the new contract. And this was the staffing in July of 2013 of what was the reorganization. We had 3-0 staffing on most of the engines, as long as no one took any time off or sick, and then we moved personnel around if we needed to. We were allotted up to 80 volunteers. That was taking in all the volunteers from the county and city and San Juan. That number was 80, and we have not reached that number. Hopefully someday we will, but the community's small, and it just depends on what we have. We have 38 at this time. We were lucky and received a SAFER grant, which allowed us to staff up the engines to 4 staffing. That is if everybody, like I said, is there. So we also were able to have flexibility to move people over to San Juan if needed and have 3L staffing there as much as possible. And then, well,
Mike?
Let's go back here.
Mike?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Explain the difference between a 2.0 staffing engine and a 4.0 staffing engine and what that means for you dealing with an incident.
2.0 staffing, if you only have 2 people is what it says, 2.0, it's 2 staffing. You basically get the engine there, you have someone that's operating that engine, and you have hopefully a supervisor either running the incident or a firefighter trying to do some suppression by himself. When you have three, you have now a supervisor, you have a firefighter doing their job, and an engineer operating the apparatus, making sure everything's running properly at the engine while that firefighter is trying to suppress the fire. When you get to four, now you have a team that can enter the fire, do some suppression. You still have a supervisor overseeing the safety of that scene, asking for additional equipment, setting up the ICS system, and you have that operator again making that safety at the engine, making sure the pump's running properly, their water supply is established. So with 4 staffing, you are able to do more. You have more safeguards. You also have divided that workload over more people, so injuries usually are reduced. The less people you have trying to do the same amount of work, injuries go up, fatigue, all that. So
I guess what the point I want to make for the public is...
if I think I answered your question, I'm not sure.
You did, but I want to let the public know that with the 2-0 staffing, before anyone could enter a structure, a second engine had to be on scene. With the 4-0 staffing, they
You
can
can go 2 in,
immediately
2 out.
go into a
Right.
structure.
Right.
Okay.
The 2 can go into the structure, and you have the 2 outside. You're meeting the minimum standards of OSHA. We still like to have a RIT team on scene and all that. Normal response today in the structure fire, correct me if I'm wrong, Division Chief Alvarez, but usually we have about 12 personnel at the scene within about 7 to 8 minutes, if it's near the city. You know, San Juan, when they had the major fire, I think we had all of our equipment, ladder truck engine, the West Side engine. So the 2 engines, a truck, and a chief officer on scene within 10 minutes. That's a tremendous response, and I think the results prove that the town still stands. That was a major fire that San Juan had. The second chart is the projected staffing somewhere down the road. We're looking at trying to add a South County station. That's probably our next address, is trying to get some help down in South County. We have had some offers of property down there that might be donated to the county if the county wants to enter into those negotiations. But we are looking at something down there and doing a 2-0 staffing initially and building that staffing up.
Mr. Chair.
You can't just add a lot of people all at once. The money and the budget's got to be there.
Supervisor Rivas?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Chief, so I see here in the 2 plans, so the projected South County fire protection, I know you just alluded to OSHA standards and, with this 4-0 staffing. So if we move towards this projected South County fire protection, there's a couple things I notice is in South County it would just be a 2-0 operation.
Correct.
And then you would reduce the number of the personnel in the regular stations from 4 to 3. And then the second part, or the third part to my question is, in San Juan Bautista, I don't see any change to add like any full-time support there. Is that because of the level of calls there? I'm not sure.
The bottom chart, it represents what is a proposal, okay? The top chart actually shows what we have today, and we have that because we have the SAFER grant. We received a $2.4 million grant from the federal government, so we were able to staff up. That grant is only a 2-year grant. The bottom will probably not happen within that time. So I don't want to allude to that we got all this staffing 2 or 3 years down the road that we don't have.
So this would be reflective of not having that grant?
That's right.
available.
And adding additional people to 2-0 staffing out there in the county. We would have to
Okay, that makes
add
sense.
some money to the grant, to your contract to add those people down there. And then purchase an engine and whatever agreements you guys work out with the landowners down there
Thank you, Chief.
to purchase a station. So I didn't want to allude to something that wasn't true down there. So that's just a proposal. We'll work out those numbers down the road. As I was saying, the fiscal impact to the county was negotiated at a $1.1 million contract. San Juan entered the contract with $150,000 each year. Those are adjusted each year not to exceed 3% of the CPI. This last year, they were adjusted to 2.6%. I think that, don't hold me, I think San Juan's is like $180,000 now. They also added $17,000 to the budget to increase the reserves pay and the driver's pay. And that was to affect all the reserves, not just the ones working in San Juan. So it helped out the overall picture. That was something San Juan stepped up to do. The county, like I said, went up 2.6%. Both of them did. Part of the consolidation was that if entering into this agreement, that maybe it would help the insurance rates countywide. And we have some preliminary results of that. The study is still going on by the Office of Insurance. But the city of Hollister was a 4 and now is a 3. The number 1 class fire department, there's very few of those in the country. Stockton used to be 1 before they went bankrupt, but they were a class 1. LA is class 1 fire department. It takes a lot to get to that level, but class 3 is excellent. Anything below a 5 says that your fire department and the community has got a good working fire service in there and water service. This takes in, the training takes in all the water, underground hydrants and water supplies for that city and county. The San Juan used to be a volunteer 5, but they call it a rural 5, and now it's a solid 5 because they have a paid staffing there at the station, which improved their insurance rates. San Diego County is a 5 within 9 minutes, 7 to 9 minutes of a station. Outside of that, they remain a 10, which has always been what those ratings were. So nothing changed on the distance on those stations. But because we are able to use the West Side Station, which is in San Juan, or station up in the airport, or Station 2 now as a county station, it makes you guys have more stations to use as that number, as well as the city gets to use those numbers too. So the consolidation is helping in the insurance.
Mr. Chair?
You know what, I gotta say.
If I may comment on that particular item.
Yes.
Just from experience within the city, the San Juan Bautista, there are some insurance companies that were not insuring residents within the canyon area or other areas that were beyond so many miles from the fire station, as well as it not being a fully manned station. So, or either residents having to pay double or triple the normal cost for insurance. So having this rating actually dropped has significantly saved residents a very good amount of money up in the canyon and other locations. I just want to make sure the board and the public were aware of that.
One of the other things as part of taking over the contract, we started issuing burn permits. This year alone, in 2014, we've issued out 134 agricultural permits and 70 backyard permits. The burn barrels, they're not allowed anymore in the county, so no permits have been issued for burn barrels. Where the Monterey Air Pollution Control Board, Unified Control Board, has outlawed burn barrels altogether.
Mike, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are you issuing burn permits countywide, or is CAL FIRE still issuing the burn permits for the state responsibility?
We're issuing countywide. CAL FIRE sends them pretty much to us now to get the burn permits.
Okay. All right.
And we pretty much go out, inspect the sites if need to. Any reports of smoke in the area, we respond to those and make sure that the persons are burning properly.
Good. Thank you.
We also, as part of giving out permits, we were asked to do prevention, and part of that is going out and doing new construction inspections and permitting those facilities. The fire sprinkler systems are in houses as well as any commercial buildings. We've issued 148 of those permits. We've done 296 inspections, and those are ongoing. We also issued 7 alarm systems countywide, and we've done 7 inspections, so that would be complete unless something failed on one of them. And we've given out 2 hood inspections. Hoods are inside of restaurants. They protect the cooking and deep frying area. Over the hood, it's a hood over the deep fryer on the exhaust system. And we inspect those to make sure they're fire safe, and there's been 2 inspections of those. This is what the fire service looked at before or prior to the consolidation. You had a volunteer station in San Juan, 2 city stations, and a CAL FIRE station on Fairview. Now you have the West Side Station. We're under development for Station 3 in the north. The 2 city stations stay in the same place, headquarters downtown, and you still have the CAL FIRE station on Fairview for the fire season. The next slide is the architectural design of Station 3, what it's proposed to be. This is at Aerostar and Flynn Road. We have moved forward. The trailer's been purchased, and we're looking at developing this property and coming back to the board for additional approvals as needed. And you have anything you want to add on that, Ray?
No, we're again, we have Joe here to discuss this any further, but Joe has done the preliminary work that we need to have in order for us to move forward with it. So again, we started the process, and that's more or less it. We'll probably be coming back to your board, like Michael Connor said, if there's any additional things that we need to bring back to your board. But that's the plan.
These are the response zones for those different stations, Station 3 being the north, 4 being to the west side. Just adding the information there. The map that's up on the PowerPoint now is the responses for 2013. It's an overall map broken down by district, by county district. And then the next map is actually 2014, up to December the 8th is when the map was made, showing the breakdown. To give you a little bit of a idea, this zone here is the South County. It's broken up into 2 zones. You have the National Park, where they take care of their calls within the National Park. We do assist them. We respond out there, auto aid to them on any calls, and mutual aid. They also respond outside the park. We entered into a auto aid agreement. The board, it was brought to the board, and you guys entered into the auto aid agreement. They respond now outside the park. The South Zone had 42 calls this year so far. Okay, where if you look in the north, Station 3 zone is up here in the north, meets the county line, the Santa Clara County line, has responded to 398 calls, approximately 400 calls in that area. That's why we're looking at that area to be the Station 3, where to put the next station and get it up there so it can respond closer to those citizens and to meet the response times. That station is, Station 3, just to be advised, is up and running. It's just running out of Station 1 right now. The staffing's there. There's not going to be any additional staffing needed to get that station up and running. It's just building the facility, the infrastructure. Another thing you asked during the consolidation was to go aggressively after grants, to see what we could do to bring money into the county to help the fire service and the members of the fire department. We went after an AFG grant, Assistant to Firefighter grant. This is for equipment, safety equipment needs. We received $423,000. That grant went for some safety turnouts and mostly for self-contained breathing apparatuses countywide. We're replacing all the breathing apparatuses on each engine with brand-new units. The matching fund was 10%, and that was picked up by my budget, the 101 account of the city of Hollister. There was no contribution by you guys or by San Juan on that issue. I budgeted for it, and you guys are getting the equipment. Okay? The other two middle grants, the rules and SCG. SCG, the construction of stations, very tough grant to get. It's very rare given out. It's mostly to very rural departments and volunteer departments. It's tough to get that grant, so I am trying to do that, see if we can get something in South County or whatever, but my grant writers tell me your chances are rare to get that. I will be going for prevention and safety grants to do some of our outreach to CERTs and Explorer posts and try to help the Prevention Bureau get some more staffing. So I will go after that this year. And then the SAFER grant is for additional staffing. As I said previously, we received that grant. We added 12 additional firefighters county-wide. They are on the county engine and the city engines. And we split that, well, there is no matching part of that grant. The grant was totally $2.4 million given to us. There was no matching from the county or city, but we had to pay for their uniforms and equipment, and each agency picked up $58,000 for that cost. And that paid for their safety equipment and their uniforms and necessary roll-up costs that we needed to get those guys online. But there is no matching after that, so there's zero match from the federal government on the SAFER grant. Basically, that's the presentation of your fire department. I appreciate this opportunity, and will entertain any questions you have at this time.
Supervisor Batella?
Yeah, Mike, thank you very much for a very good presentation. And
It's a lot of information.
when we entered into this arrangement, this consolidation, we knew from the onset that this was going to be a real challenge for the city of Hollister. And, you know, it was a heck of a undertaking, and you did an outstanding job putting it together. Mike, pardon me?
Mike, your mic.
No, you're Mike.
I'm sorry.
You didn't want any of that
I
recorded?
gotta start all over with
You
my
didn't want any of
speech.
that recorded, right?
Hopefully that, no, hopefully everybody heard what I said. I apologize. But, you know, I was just stating that it's very, very difficult to bring departments together, work as a cohesive unit, and we still have work to do in that regard. There's still a lot of work to do. But at this point in my district, District 2, you know, I'm not only speaking for the portion in the west, San Juan Bautista, the San Juan Canyon, but here in Hollister, this consolidation effort improved the city of Hollister's fire protection as well, as best illustrated with the Insurance Services Office, you know, the ISO rating for the city being improved. And not only are the people that need the service are getting an improved service, but those that are paying their property insurance, homeowners insurance, are receiving a tremendous benefit by the action that, you know, the city of Hollister took with this board and the city of San Juan in consolidating these services. And if I was to give a grade to this point, it's A+ to the city of Hollister.
Thank you.
You've exceeded my expectations as far as performance. The staff, the professionalism in Hollister that has been kind of circulated around through the county has been exceptional as far as public relations. Working with the people at the Fire Safe Council, they just been, they had a big grant, and your, you know, staff, you know, was very much in the assistance with that implementation of the shaded fire break program.
Yes.
And it just goes beyond just responding code 3 someplace and helping people. And I certainly hope we continue on this path. Yes, we have more work. We need to get that station in North County and South County up and running, and continue to, iron out some of the personnel issues. But other than that, I've been very, very pleased, and this was a fine report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. As well, ditto what Supervisor Patello just said. I have not received a single complaint from any of my constituents, really, and I don't expect that that will happen, because I think you address the issues as soon as you get a call and provide us the best service as you can. One of the things that I wanted when I first decided that this is the way I would support the consolidation with the city of Hollister is that I wanted that North County to be addressed, and it was done. I know that we don't have the station yet, but it's well
We're working on
underway.
it.
We gave a timeline, and that was met, and that speaks, volumes for me that you are addressing that. And we also addressed South County. We knew that wasn't going to happen as quickly, but it's moving forward. So thank you, and thank you for the service. Thank your staff, and also all the volunteers, because you are providing wonderful service.
And trust me, I could not have done this without my staff.
I understand that, so-
Down from the firefighter all the way up to my division chief.
Right.
The support that they've given me this last year and a half has been tremendous.
Yeah,
And
but the leadership is important to
I
continue
appreciate
that, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, there's nothing bad to say. Everything's good. Keep up the good work. But you know me, I always kid with you and keep
I know you do. And I appreciate it.
The only positive, and it's more of a joke, is that I live like about a block away from the main station right here. And anytime there's a call out, I hear those fire sirens go up, and my wife goes, "Oh, there it goes, there they go, doing a good job." So thank you, and
And that's
thank
the
you for doing
busiest
it.
house, too.
Yeah.
Rivas?
So, Chief, I want to thank you for the presentation. It's really informative. And as the CIO said, I was the one that recommended this come before our board. And namely,
Thank you for the opportunity.
yeah, and I agree with everything that has been said, but I also think that there's a lot that we can do to improve the service. I think
Agree.
the 7-minute response time is unacceptable. I think that we can do more to improve that, and the way we do that is working together to increase our personnel, to increase our stations and our presence in the county, right? But that's going to take time. I understand, and I know you guys are doing the best you can. I think my main concern is not really with the action and the level of service that you guys have provided. For me, it's been a complete breakdown of, in my opinion, the communication between the city and the county, especially when it came to your investigation. I know that was completely out of your hands, but I think that when there is internal strife, as apparently there has been, that when you have a county, a government that is giving over $1 million to a contract, this internal strife is not only a city problem, but it becomes a county problem. And that's the problem I had with this investigation and the lack of the communication, at least between our staffs and between, the administration of the city and the administration of our county. There needs to be more of that cooperation between our city and county, to make this thing flow and work even more efficiently. And that's why I would hope in the future we could have that dialogue between our two governments to create a special district, to create maybe a JPA, because this fire, this plan is great, but I think that you really need to take the politics out of it between our board and between council members and create, in my opinion, a well-oiled machine in just, where you have this fire service and you have this independent board. I'm not sure how it's done, but I know the county of Monterey, they have fire districts all over that county, and I think that that's something that would be a positive thing. I know it can't happen overnight, but I at least hope that we can explore those opportunities and explore those options, so that way this is a fire service that's going to be here for the very long term. So. And you know, and we don't have to deal with these year-to-year contracts and, you know, these 3-year renewals. It's just something that will stay in place and you know, and it could keep improving. So, thanks, Mr. Chair.
And again, thanks for bringing it to the board, so give me the opportunity to speak on it. And I do agree that this, you contracting with the city of Hollister, I use the word consolidation. Really, the fire service has not been consolidated. It's just all the agencies are contracting with the city. We formed it kind of as a consolidation in that matter. So as we step forward to the JPA or to the district, the fire service down there, the fire guys will not see any change. They will continue to run pretty much the way they are. There's no boundaries. Wherever the engine's needed is where it responds to, the closest one. So that's how it was designed. But this was a baby step in the right direction, and I think we have a lot more steps to make. And I hope we do. I hope the fire service continues to grow in this county.
Mike, I'm going to hold back my comments, and I'm going to offer a chance for the public to comment on this item. Do we have any speaker cards? Would anyone like to address the board on this item?
Come on.
Seeing none?
I did something right or something wrong. I'm not sure which.
Well, my first comment is if Supervisor Bertello gave you an A+, then I want you to shoot for an A++ next year.
I'll get some extra credit there.
Okay. At our last meeting, and this is for the public, we had our sheriff in department head announcement talk about how woefully understaffed his department is. And I want the public to realize that for the fire service, we have made great strides in the last year and a half to improve the fire service, not only for the city of Hollister, but for the county as a whole and the city of San Juan. And sometimes a small entity as ourselves, we know we have issues, but we can only handle one issue at a time, especially in difficult financial times. And I want the public to understand that we have made great strides in providing additional fire services. Unfortunately, that message I don't think has gotten down to South County, mainly because of misinformation that was being put out when we were considering this. But I think they will see, if they're not already seeing it, eventually they will see it, that the service for them will also improve as we get that Fire Station 5 up and running in the not too distant future. This has been a definite baby step, like you said. It's just one of the steps that we need to go forward. It has been a great step in coming together, and I too fully support either the creation of a fire district or a joint power agency to oversee the operation of fire safety. And I still am hoping that we can do the same for law enforcement for the county and the city of Hollister and the city of San Juan as we have done for fire protection. With that, thank you, Mike, for your report.
I just like to add again, thanks to all my staff down there, my firefighters, engineers, and captains, and my division chief. I also like to thank the city manager for giving me the freedom to work on this kind of stuff and work with the county to try to help in the city of San Juan to help their fire services. So he's given me a lot of freedom to run that department down there. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. With that, we will move on, Mr. Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're on item number 19 on our agenda. This particular item really is coming out of the city of Hollister, and this is requesting your board to approve a transfer of revolving loan funds to the Fresno Community Development Financial Institution. So this particular item is something that Billy Avera, the city manager, can discuss with your board as well as the public. Billy?
Thank you, Chair and board members. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. Several years ago, back in 1992, I believe it was, the city's redevelopment agency and the county of San Benito applied for a revolving loan fund grant through the Economic Development Administration at the federal level. At that time, it was right after some fires and the earthquake, and there was a desperate need to rebuild downtown, and we were looking for any tools available to us. So the redevelopment agency, not to be funny or anything like that, but the city committed $199,900. The county committed $100 to kind of complete the $200,000 match that was part of the original RLF program. With that money, we were able to secure an additional $300,000 from the EDA, which basically gave us a pool, obviously, of $500,000. We started the program, and we initially loaned 4 major loans to the Martin Building, the Dennehy Building, the Farm Bureau Building, and to Premier Cinemas. And that was what kind of started the reconstruction of downtown. This money through the EDA and the program, it's very difficult money to lend. It comes with all the federal constraints. It also comes with all the job creation constraints as well. Many of those original folks paid us back relatively quickly, which was then intended to be sort of going into a revolving loan and do much smaller loans. But because we got a big bulk of the principals back immediately, we were able to do some additional loans. San Benito Shedders got a loan. There was a couple other ones that ended up relatively large loans. Moving forward, as the program went into the early 2000s, mid-2000s, the economy was taking off and whatnot. The money became much more difficult to lend because commercial lenders or conventional lenders were offering decent rates without all the sort of the rules and regulations that come with the EDA money. So it virtually went non-existent for a while until we did a couple of loans, and I'd rather not mention names, but these loans actually defaulted relatively quickly. And the administration of these dollars was actually being done by a private institution in Salinas for us. They would do all the underwriting. They would come to the RLF board to get approved, and we would disperse the funds. That got us in trouble with the EDA. They didn't like that, obviously. The program remained dormant. When the county hired C.J. Valenzuela, there was a period of time when he was working on some housing things and funding became an issue for him and he was looking for other means. We were talking to C.J. and talking to Ray a little bit about having C.J. take over the RLF program just because he had some lending experience and we were going to try to break him into sort of the commercial and business world. CJ subsequently left. The EDA then came to us and said, we basically either need to start up the program again or they're going to take back the balance of the funds and distribute it elsewhere. So we were all really kind of prepared to just have that happen because it was, again, finding people to participate in the program is very difficult at best. Brett reached out to the EDA and to another organization in Fresno, and this is what we're shooting for at this point. The organization in Fresno is an underwriting firm organization. They work with RLF programs through the EDA in several areas. It was one method that we can make sure that the original money actually stays in San Benito County, and that's now the goal. There's about $686,000 left in the pool. It's a nice time for the period of transition because there isn't an active loan. All the loans have either been paid back. Technova was the final loan to be completely paid off. And then obviously the other ones that were in default or bankruptcy, we don't actually have anything to do with anymore. So it's a nice clean transition. The EDA has asked the City Council to adopt a resolution authorizing us to remit the funds that we have in our accounts. You don't have any of the money to the Fresno division, and then and come to your board as well and ask for the same thing. I know that there was a little bit of consternation about not having an MOU. I think what we'd like to do is if we have to make this decision before December 31st. When we actually come together with a good MOU with the Fresno department, we can always bring that back to you to your approval as well, or just your acknowledgement. I know I talked to the Chamber of Commerce and the city, and we're still committed in sort of marketing the program, so people can go onto our website, business and economic development folks. We'll just put them in touch with the folks that are in Fresno. The city of Hollister just, we also had some CDBG monies, some business improvement loans that we were doing that with another person out of Fresno, Angela Johnson, and those worked out pretty well. We did a loan with La Katrina and another one with San Benito Shutters. So we can still market. Chamber of Commerce is committed to market. HDA will continue, is committed to market. We're just seeking that organization over there to do the administration, which means once they give a loan, they do the annual reporting or the semi-annual reporting to EDA, and then obtain all the information from those participants or from the folks that actually received the loans. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them. Otherwise, I'm recommending, or staff's recommending, that we, the board adopt the attached resolution. So.
I have lots of questions.
Okay. Supervisor Barris?
I'll go first, Billy.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
You did mention that the Chamber of Commerce knew about this. I was asking myself, how come we didn't know about it? But it wasn't for us. It was
No.
for the businesses, and so you were actively trying to promote these funds for somebody's use.
Yeah, and generally what happens, again, we did a lot of stuff at new construction, which required people to do prevailing wage and things like that. So there's a lot of times where it didn't really, the marriage wasn't really there, and a lot of folks couldn't see the advantage of these dollars, and that's where it's been for the last 10 years or so.
Okay,
So.
and then the other thing is, why not a regional partner like Monterey, where it would be easier for our businesses to travel, to sign, to meet, rather than go all the way to Fresno?
Well, that's essentially that's where we were. We were in the Monterey area. That's Salinas was actually doing it for us, and and again, why it's important because the EDA has confidence in Fresno. They're running an operation right now for, like I said, several cities. If it's a situation where you know, a potential applicant or for paper signing or documentation or meetings, you know, we will always be able to have that arrangement with Fresno. They can use our offices to meet here. Again, like Angela was in Fresno as well, but she always was here to meet with applicants, and we can make those arrangements. We can set it up any way we want to. So.
Okay. So is Fresno going to do anything to promote the funds in San Benito County? Because this is what I'm worried about, is that we have a potential to lose some of that money for administration costs and for advertising.
No.
We won't.
Yeah, they only receive money when they actually do a loan. So that's where their administration money comes from. We have committed to continue, like I say, do the marketing to some extent on our end. Chamber has, and they will also do marketing as well.
Okay, and then on a personal side, I have a client who had asked, and he knew about the city having these funds. I called the city, and they said that those funds were no longer available.
Right now, the EDA is basically we've sequestered everything, so they're
That's why,
yeah,
okay.
they're not technically available, but they will be made available again as soon as we get this arrangement set up.
So if
Yeah.
they want to pursue that,
Yeah.
they can go to the city.
And it should be very, very quickly from that
Okay,
point forward.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
And there also, the CDBG was another business improvement loan that we had. Those are no longer available either. So this is kind of the last ditch effort for making sure that some monies are available to businesses. And this is, again, countywide. It's not necessarily just the city of Hollister.
City. One last question that
Sure.
just came to mind. Is this tied with SBA at all?
Well, see, that's the other part, is a lot of times, this is where we've been in trouble. It's very similar to SBA in that the riskier loans we've asked for collateral, which includes homes and other things.
Right.
Like I said, try not to be, the Veranda Cafe was one of them where we had not only the business itself secured, but the gentleman's house secured, and we still don't end up with anything at the end of the day. So that's just,
So there's issues.
yeah, again, and that's why sometimes businesses aren't that thrilled about going after this money, is because they have to give up a lot more than really what it's worth.
And that led to another question. Do we have this money indefinitely once we switch it over to the
Yeah,
Fresno?
then what'll happen is that when we make say $100,000 loan, just, you know, when the client then pays it back on typical method, it goes right back into the program,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
So it'll be ongoing.
Thank you, Billy.
You're
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would anyone from the public like to address this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve and adopt resolution number 2014-108 per staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, Billy.
Mr. Espinoza?
Yeah, we're on item number 20 this morning, and this is going to be coming out of our Public Works office. We have our interim Public Works Director, Joe Hort, out to discuss this. This is really kind of an add-on to what was discussed this morning concerning CFDs or CSAs, as well as CFD in the Melrose district right now. So this is, I think, a really important item. I've asked to actually put this up a little bit sooner on the agenda for all to hear. But this is something that we need to address. We're looking at. I've actually been working with Bob Braitment on this particular item, as well as our Public Works office. But Joe has more information that he can discuss with you. Again, this is just a discussion item, and this particular item, if directed by your board, will be coming back to you again in January. Joe?
Thank you, Ray. So this was an item that, from staff standpoint, we really felt was important. While there's a statutory requirement or state law to adopt goals and policies before we create a CFD, we really wanted to go through and make sure that the board had an opportunity to think about it and not feel rushed in that process. And so in addition to just a normal AIT, we actually created a more detailed staff report. We really wanted to go through and put some context to these. The CFDs or the financing districts, facilities districts, are a tool that the state of California created essentially as assessment districts. But with all the different tools that have been available in the past, there are really tight constraints on what you can put into those. The ability to do operating type of cost, like an assessment district, is really hard to do, so that's why CSAs exist. When CFDs were created, or also known as a Melrose district, it allowed more variability in how costs are weighted between different types of land uses, which gave more flexibility for local agencies, governmental agencies, and what went into these and what we were paying for. Because in like a normal assessment district where a public agency owns land, we get assessed just like everybody else, even though we're providing services. So it kind of double counts things. We really wanted, though, as a part of the board's discussion, to kind of step back and think about, is this one, and as we talked this morning, is this something that we want to entertain doing? If so, when are the circumstances we would want to do this? And so in our staff report, I tried to go through and lay out some considerations around that, and actually I'm going to start backwards with the questions. And so I think I tried to frame some questions that I think would be helpful for both discussion today, but also as we come back in January, to make sure that we're really building a policy that is relevant to the policy direction of the board. Because we can create whatever, staff, whatever's needed, but I want to make sure it really reflects where the board wants to go with an important tool. And that's really is, are there any constraints about the types of CFDs that we want to create, or the types of projects that can ask for these to be created? These CFDs typically are created or asked to be created by development projects. Today's conversation is a result of the Santana Ranch project, which actually has a permit condition to create a CFD or similar type financing district or mechanism to help meet the revenue neutrality goals that we built into that project. So we need to have tools to achieve our goals, such as revenue neutrality. And this, really the question is, should a 5-unit residential subdivision be able to create this? Are there times we really want to use it as an economic development strategy? And so I think there's some opportunities, again, with the flexibility about weighting of what goes into the district, of how we use this tool for our overall long-term sustainability in the county. But, so that first question is this something we're even interested in? So that's something I would like to start the conversation today around that. The one that I think is most critical and a lot of public agencies deal with is infrastructure. And that goes to the discussion this morning is, what is the risk to the county for infrastructure that a developer may go and ask to get financed, that if the development goes sideways, land values decline, or in the future homeowners decide they don't want to keep paying that, is there a risk to this county for those kinds of costs? And a number of jurisdictions have really dealt with that and said that they really don't want to be in the business of financing developers' costs. They use it as an operating O&M type fund, so that they deal with the yearly cost of providing street lighting, street sweeping, road maintenance, but not getting into financing, building roads and sewers and that sort of stuff, though Mello-Roos allows us to do that. And I think that's one that really warrants, deliberate conversations. The other pieces, and this is where that economic development piece fits in. If we have a major employer that's looking at coming in, is that maybe a time that you would look at infrastructure? Again, we have that flexibility, but it's one that that's why the state requires goals and policies to be adopted, is to put that kind of thought into these types of policies before you have something in front of you that is really enticing and shiny, and that you might do something that kind of in rational light you might not do. That's really the importance about this. This becomes that guidepost that future boards will look at and say, is this make sense, or is this a good business deal for the county to be invested in or to participate in? So, that's why today is important and relevant. And then the last bullet I put on there, and this is a conversation we have in the development agreements requirements, that when somebody wants a development agreement, there's a requirement for extraordinary benefit to the county. Same sort of question is, the county does not have to approve CFDs. That's something that is up to the county board to decide yes or no that we want to do that. But as a part of that decision-making, are there things that we're trying to achieve, again, on a countywide basis, that this is one of those opportunities to say, we're willing to help you if you help us in kind of going above what our normal requirements would be. So I think there's some discussions around that and how that fits in with those overall guiding policies. We did provide the board with a draft set of policies. These were prepared by our outside counsel. We looked at other agencies and their goals and policies to see where there are things that we should include in. So I think it's probably about a 95% set of goals and policies, assuming the board would want to go do it. And based on where you've been in the past, from a policy standpoint, we think we've accounted for those sorts of things. But it is something, again, we wanted to go through and not bring to you on, a day like today and say, well, it needs to get approved because I've got a project that needs it tomorrow. Because we really do want the board and really the community an opportunity to kind of think about this and then come back to the board in January, and so that we could adopt those, assuming the board's interested with pursuing CFDs, that we would adopt these and then start looking at individual projects. Santana Ranch is working with us on trying to create a CFD, so clearly that's why we're here today. But it's one that we've talked with them that we wanted to create that space so that the board was able to go through and have a deliberate conversation on these important policies before we really dove into what are we going to do on a given project. And so with that, I would go through and be open to answering questions. Shirley's here also, and Matt, and kind of help the board with this conversation.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Barris?
Okay. The two-thirds vote that is mentioned here, is that the vote of the board or the vote of the development? Tell me how that works, because I get the impression that it's a prop. Is it a Prop 218 process?
Yeah, so we still have to go through all the normal constitutional protections the state of California has. And the two-thirds is of the property owners. And so that's why you typically CFDs happen with new development, because you have one or two property owners that control the site. They're able to vote, that forward. There are CFDs that get created on a much broader basis, whether it's to do county-wide or city-wide type facilities. So you'll see sometimes like a library district or library type fees that show up on through things like this. Dealt with in my old life was hotel tax that was done really through a CFD type process that all the hotels voted on. So they needed two-thirds of the property owners of the hotels to join in and do that.
So this would be the property owners, and if you have a new development, you've got, maybe one property owner, as we did with
Right.
that CSA, then you don't have an issue. Then
Right.
they choose to go that way per our policies, then
Right.
we've got it.
Yeah, and so like Santana Ranch, we have, property owner developer that would be the one voting on that, and that all happens, and it's it's required to happen prior to final maps being approved, which was, when you'd start getting homeowners out there, is that you do it way up front. One of the things, well, I'll stop there.
Yeah, one last question is, Melrose, you wrote down the disadvantages, that it has a negative market perception in some areas. Why would that be?
Well, you'll see it in the Sunday newspaper ads for developers selling homes, that you'll sometimes see tags in there, no Melrose, just because it is, and it's an added tax. So, if you have a property tax you're paying on your property, if you're in a CSA, you're paying a supplemental property tax. It's like a CSA amount.
But they don't put down no CSA, I mean.
Right,
so-
well, and that's one that
So it's
I think
actually-
people understand Melrose more in the marketplace
the
than CSAs.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any speaker cards on this?
No.
item? Would anyone from the public like to address the board on this item? Seeing none? So, Joe, you want our feedback between now and the January meeting?
Right.
And I guess my concern is with the holidays, and this is an important item and concept. Are we under any time constraint with Santana Ranch in getting this in place?
Well, Brian can talk if he wants about it, but they are out there clearly grading on the property. They are starting to work with county building staff on model home permits, and we can issue those without final maps. But before they can start getting building permits for individual homes, which I think they would be wanting to do not far behind the model home permits, they would need the CFD created. We do have a timeline that's put together that the goal is to have the CFD created if one's going to be done. We were thinking in a March timeframe. It actually can happen pretty quick, the votes, because it's one person.
Oh, okay, so we adopt these policies at the January, there's still some more steps that has
There's
to
more
happen.
steps to happen.
Gotcha. So I guess my next question is staff going to be available to sit down with us in spite of the holiday schedule and answer any questions we have on this?
I am around, so I would be very happy if there's, phone calls, emails, or want me to come down, I'm happy to come back, sit down and meet for an hour or two and kind of walk through it.
December 24th, that sounds right. Actually,
Yeah, you go ahead and try to set that meeting up, and I want to see what your wife has to say about it.
No.
I have on my calendar, I'm working the morning of the 24th, though my wife tells me I'm not.
Trust me, I wouldn't hear the end of it. Mr. Chair, Joe, I'm trying to understand this. I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to understand this.
Absolutely.
So it's providing, I guess I'll just say it the way I feel. Is it providing funds like for sheriff, fire, those kind of services? And then is it providing for, because there's always that one-time impact fees, and I'm getting this from former Supervisor Love. She used to argue this very, very well when she was on the board. Is it a one-time funding? It's not. It's an ongoing, and there's that additional incremental that it can provide for like COLAs or, just cost doing business and all the other good stuff. Is that what is your...
So that is correct. It is not a one-time. It is an ongoing revenue stream, so it would be on the property tax for the life of that property. Okay. There are escalation provisions that are built into the enabling legislation under state law. We have the ability to stay within that cap or lower. Clearly, staff, I think we're going to recommend going with the
And then in the component of the goals and, what is it, goals and objectives?
goals and policies.
Goals and policy, thank you. You could expand the definition of where those funds can be used, right?
Melrose has more flexibility than a traditional assessment district, so that's what we were trying to kind of put the breadth of what's allowed. And clearly, public safety, infrastructure, maintenance type things. We were trying to go through and build a definition of what is revenue neutrality and how to achieve that. So that's one of the things we're working on right now, is how to take the permit condition and the goals of the policy of projects to be revenue neutral and how to reflect that in the world of Mello-Roos legislation. But, you'll actually see that spelled out in the goals and policies as one of the purposes why the county would even consider doing this is to achieve revenue neutrality.
And I'm willing to bet, and it's probably common sense, that a developer or an owner, they ain't going to object to this, right? Pass it through.
I think developers like having this tool, especially when infrastructure, and so that's partly why I spent time saying I think we need to have a very deliberate discussion on infrastructure. But the ability to go through and not write a big check, with every home to try and achieve revenue neutrality, and to say here's 50 years worth of revenue neutrality, I'm going to give it to you today. That's really hard to finance. So this is a good tool for that.
So it doesn't do two things, right? It doesn't allow the developer to forego the development that they have to commit to, right? It won't, like, for example, they got to do I don't know, just thinking of putting a tree in front of a house. They still have to do that, right?
That would be a normal requirement, and they should,
Right.
be off installing that, yes.
Right. And then the other is it doesn't forego their commitment to whatever development agreements we reach with them, right? This is all exclusive of all these components.
Well, it's a tool usually of how to achieve a development agreement.
The development agreement will incorporate the terms and conditions of the CFD.
Okay.
So in those projects which a development agreement is applicable, or where we have developed one, we have spelled out in that development agreement in paragraph 8, you shall form a CFD. The CFD shall raise enough money so that the impact on the county is neutral from a financial standpoint. The money will go to the county to be used for whatever, safety, public safety, or whatever it is we're negotiating. So the development agreement usually requires the formation of the CFD and defines the extent of it.
Okay, so if they...
With terms, too. So, I mean, we could, if depending on what that is, that fiscal neutrality is, it could be limited with time as well. So time could maybe 10 years or 15 years. It just depends.
Yeah, but I believe the Santana Ranch is unlimited.
The Santana Ranch would be unlimited.
The development agreements that we have negotiated to date that have the CFD in it, there is no sunset provision on the CFD.
I have one other question, Mr. Chair, if I could, when he's done. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Supervisor Barris?
Once you do the first Prop 218, you will never have to go and do another one. Is that correct?
Unless you, yes, if you don't change the charge structure of what that CFD covers, you're done with going back to the voters. You would not have to talk to property.
And that's an advantage, because
Yes.
now you don't have this ongoing account, special account that you have to, monitor and report back, and that gets saved.
There's obligations for reporting and that are going on, so those don't go away. But it's one that of how the assessments are put on properties, that it's more flexible than what we can do under CSA or normal assessment district. So it gives us a little bit more room to deal with some of the challenges of people not paying their property taxes because they're in foreclosure or things that your fund would run dry, because we have the ability to build some of those types of things into it. But it's the last paragraph I put in the staff report is just, that recognition that when we create these and when we negotiate them, we need to go through and be thinking kind of big, because we're always on the short side of, whenever there's a rounding error, we're always on the short side of that. So we need to just make sure we're always negotiating on our long-term interests. Clearly from a developer standpoint, they don't want a blank check to try and sell a home that, 20 years from now, there's $1 million assessment on it. So there is that push tension that we're always going to be working at, but it is one that, I guess my advice is don't go through and pre-negotiate caps on things that, absolute dollar amounts, because they will always come back, where you're just going to bump into them.
Yeah. So on the 20th of January, this will come before us. We have a draft here.
Right.
We look at it. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get it also on the agenda when we get.
Right, it'll come back.
And if we have any suggestions or changes, we need to talk to you. We need to call you.
Yeah.
Or staff.
And we'll work it through and get it all merged back in, and I'm assuming the January 20th is when we would be back
Okay,
for that.
very good. Thank you.
Supervisor Vitello?
Yeah, I don't have that much to say other than, right now, the system we have is unsustainable. We're going backwards. And as growth is going to start occurring, in the county, we better have all the tools we can have
to find revenue neutrality for the services and that people expect to have. And, you know, I'll take a look at this. It's a little bit more complex than what I thought, but if, you know, Santana Ranch is to go forward, we have to have this in place before that building permits are issued, because that's one of the reasons I did end up supporting that project, is because I thought we would have this in the development agreement to begin with. And it needs to really happen before anything goes on up there. That's where I'm at.
And I've asked the public for any of their comments, right? You didn't have any? Okay, so I think we're good. We're good for January meeting.
See you in January.
And you'll be available for any
Absolutely.
questions. Thank you, Joe. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Yes, we're on our next item on our agenda. This is coming out of our COG office. This will be presented to us by our interim executive director, Mary Gilbert. And this is just to give your board an update on Highway 25, the widening project side of things, and to kind of just give us an update from our last time that we've had Mary here. So, Mary, thanks.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. As the CAO said, I'm just here really to give you an update on the Highway 25 project and the progress that COG is making. And really, I think this comes a little bit in response to the resolution that your board passed, asking that the Council of Governments take steps to add the widening project to the constrained list of projects on our 2014 Regional Transportation Plan, which was adopted back in June. So I provided some information in a staff report to you regarding the project. Basically, the status of the project right now is we, as COG, are coordinating with Caltrans on finalizing a Tier 1 environmental impact statement for the project. That's something that was started in the early 2000s, and public outreach was done on that environmental impact statement back in 2010. So we're sort of revisiting that environmental document. Caltrans is updating environmental studies and will be coming out to COG and to the public soon on that project. And that's for the entire 4-lane widening from San Felipe Road up to the San Benito County line. As far as COG, what we're doing is we're looking at, okay, we have this large 4-lane widening project, but also there's been a lot of input from different elected bodies as well as the public regarding the scope of the project and what we can do, what's feasible and buildable in the near term, and also what we can do to update the regional transportation plan and perhaps amend it to include Highway 25 in that. So there's really 3 elements to that, and I provided you with a handout that lists the elements that we're working on, and I also provided copies in the back for the public. So the first item is that, COG really has to look at our financials, our financial element of our regional plan. What funding do we reasonably anticipate that could go to Highway 25 or other projects in the county? And we have to be very constrained with that financial element and be as realistic and reasonable as possible. And then the second element is project review. So looking at that 4-lane widening project, what's currently proposed is, a 4-lane expressway. Again, we're looking at where we can maybe scale down the project if possible to make it something that's buildable, but that takes time and it takes efforts in project engineering and that, and so COG is pursuing that right now. We also have an element of community involvement. We're hoping to get more stakeholders involved at the table. We'll be hosting a meeting currently proposed for January 29th, and invitations and more information will come out in the next week or so about that meeting. To get folks together and really set some goals for the project and really be responsive to the community and our needs. And we're also coordinating regionally with the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments as well as Caltrans. So working towards a regional plan amendment, we would have to have a financial element that's revised. We would have to revise our project lists to include Highway 25, however it's scoped based on this work that we're doing. And then we would have to do environmental review, public outreach, and eventually seek approval by the COG board, and that's who would make the final approval there. I think that kind of brings you up to date on what we're doing. So, in pursuit of that amendment or, changes to the project, we're following a work plan that was adopted by the COG board and which was included in your agenda transmittal for this morning. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on this.
Supervisor Patella?
Yeah, Supervisor, Chairman Munzer and myself been working on this at COG pretty extensively with our colleagues from the cities. And this is not an easy project. This is a big effort, and it's take some time. And I'm happy you broke this out as far as the financial element, the project review and amendment. And it clearly illustrates the steps that we need to take. And, I'm a big financial guy. Where does the money come from? And this morning we saw that our traffic impact fee account is at $3 million. We already have allocated $9 million. I think the city is paying a portion of that for the 156, but that gives you a clue that we have a long ways to go before the impact fees start addressing towards this, another state project. And, is it enough to just say for a financial element that after we have a project and define the project, if we could get Caltrans to narrow the scope way I think all of us here locally want to do it, just add 2 lanes to the existing 2 lanes for the stretch and make it as narrow as possible using the existing route that's the most cost effective. Well, at that time, we'll go to the voters and ask them to pass a sales tax. Is that enough, or do we have to have the sales tax in place already and revenue already set aside?
In order to amend it into the regional transportation plan and say that we have the funding available, is that the question? That
right.
In order to do that? No. If there is a real substantial, I guess, effort, that's supported in the community, we don't have to have even anything on the ballot yet. For example, in Monterey County, and I think we've talked about this before, they assumed a sales tax in their regional transportation plan. They've been working for several years and have actually made some attempts on the ballot to have a sales tax passed. So that's a clear direction that, say, Monterey County has been taking. In San Benito County, we haven't had that direction yet from the COG board. And when we did develop the financial assumptions at that time, the COG board didn't, direct us to include any of those types of assumptions. So we didn't in the regional plan. We're revisiting that now because it's, it's clear that we're gaining some support for that, and we want to be as realistic as possible when we do that. So.
And, I'm not in on those dialogue, but we had 2 design alternatives.
Yes.
One to the east of the existing alignment between San Felipe and 156, and one to the west. Mm-hmm. And that was the most costly portion of the road, I
Yeah.
believe. You think Caltrans, or does Caltrans has any flexibility to utilize the existing alignment that we have and maybe compromise on, some of that?
Some of the design. Yes, I think so. We've met with Caltrans, the District 5 director. I went down to San Luis Obispo with the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, and we met there. And there was support and understanding that what San Benito County wants is, possibly a smaller footprint. And so what we're pursuing right now with the environmental impact statement that I talked about is a route adoption and basically identifying a corridor for improvements. Within that corridor, what is actually going to be built, that is still to be determined and to be refined. And that's what we're working on now.
And the last question is probably the hardest because I've asked this before and I've never had a clear answer. What is the timeline of getting this project with all these steps to be able to put the project back on the constrained list?
That is a hard question to answer because there's so many variables at stake. But based on the work plan that we're working on, and something I didn't mention earlier is that we are working on updating the traffic impact mitigation fee program study. And so with that, we'll be doing new traffic modeling and looking at growth projections and that. And that process is about a 9-month process, and we're just getting started now. And I think that these two tie really closely together and also tie in with the work that Caltrans is doing on that environmental document. That, you know, within those 9 months, I think we'll make a lot of progress and be able to have the financials identified and a little bit better of a project scope identified then.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to make the comment that and there's been accusation that nothing is happening with Highway 25, and your report shows that steps are being done. You know, the environmental impact report, I think, was sitting on the shelf for a few years, and now we're finishing it up. That's a very important step. The other issue that I want the public to understand is the project before us right now is a $200+ million project that we're never going to be able to afford. And it only gets us to the county line. So it goes back down to Highway 25 goes back down to a 2-lane road. And you have that bottleneck. We need Santa Clara, VTA, and Caltrans District 4 assistance on this. And they are now starting to talk about it again. It had been put on the shelf for them. So people are talking about this. And for me, we have to come up with a project that we can afford, that Supervisor Patello alluded to. Caltrans is listening to us, and I think if we just were to put this back on the constraint list, Caltrans would say, okay, they're good with it, you know, and we would have a project we couldn't afford. They're hearing from us through COG that we can't afford what's before us now, and they're realizing it. And Highway 25 is not going to be paid for by the state. It's going to be paid for by the residents of San Benito County. So we have to come up with a project that we can afford. And we're working very hard to do that. And when we have gotten closer to that, I'd be much more comfortable in having it put on the constraint list. And again, putting it on the constraint list doesn't get us one step closer to funding it or to building it. But working out these other details ahead of time will. With that,
I
go ahead.
do have a comment.
Supervisor
With that being said, you're absolutely right. It may not get us anywhere closer, but I think what we need to do is, we all know how important Highway 25 is. We all know that we need to widen it. And we cannot put it on the shelf any longer as we have in the past. What I like to see happen is that we get these kind of reports so that we are assured. We passed a resolution here as a county. The city did as well and said, hey, we want this to be a project that we want to address, and we need to move forward. So with that being said, then this report, we need to get that every 3 months and know where we're at and know that it hasn't been stopped and that progress is being made. I know it's going to be slow, but at least we are on top of it, and we are aware that what we directed COG to do is being done. So now Highway 152 is back on the table. We know that's coming back, and that includes part of Highway 25.
It does.
So where do we get, at what part do we say, all right, if you're going to put 152 to intersect or to merge with 25, I mean, that can address part of the funding right there. So I'm hoping that's what you were alluding to.
It absolutely was.
Yeah, so that
It gets us
conversation.
on the other side of the county line.
Right, has to be ongoing. We have to meet regularly. We can't drop the ball. So that's all I wanted to say, make sure that happens.
The other thing I'm concerned about, and Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, we're redoing our traffic impact study, fee study. If we were to put this $200 million project into that study, it would kick our impact fees, our traffic impact fees, up to the level where all the developers were saying they can't build here. So I don't want to see that happen. I want to have a project that will work for us, that is sustainable, and we can fund partly through impact fees, partly through another mechanism to be determined, because the impact fee alone will not pay for it either. That's already been assessed.
Mr. Chair, and I should know this, but Mary, and I guess, Mr. Chair, you guys are reviewing the traffic impact report. What project are you going to include in that report that would allow for a fee to apply to every unit? What report are you going to do? Because it's like, what's a good old saying that Supervisor Tilly say? You put, what is it? What's your saying? You put the cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart?
Well, it's hard to come up with a fee structure until
Right.
you know what the project is.
That's my question right there. So what's the answer to that question?
The answer is that while we are putting together the traffic impact fee, we'll be revisiting the project design and.
But you need a dollar set.
Yes, and determining
what dollar are you going to put? Because if it's going to be, shorter lanes, it's going to be 2 lanes, just adding a 2-lane, or, north or south to the highway. What project? I guess that's where I'm confused. What is it that we're going to finally put in the equation to come up with the proper fee structure?
We are still refining that project as we develop the impact fee, and with that, we will develop a project cost estimate. And this is something that we've done in previous iterations of the fee program, where a certain project may be proposed, and we refine it. And in that work, I'm working with your public works director, your planning director, and their counterparts at the city of Hollister, too. So it's not just a COG standalone project. Your staff is involved
My understanding,
in that development.
Santana Ranch is out of the question, right? On this new traffic impact report, right? That's not going to happen, right? That's safe to say that, right? Right?
I'm not sure if their fees have been.
I guess I asked this question
assessed
to
yet.
Matt, right, Matt? Whatever new fee structure would come Santana Ranch, that's not even part of the equation, right? Okay. So we missed an opportunity to assess some dollars of 1,000 units going to go out there. So we missed that boat. That's gone. So I guess my final words is, let's make sure we move forward, because we don't want another project to miss that opportunity too. So that's very important. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any speaker cards? Anybody from the public like to address this item?
Marty Richard from Hollister. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. I know this is a bitter subject, but I'm going to bring it up again. I don't see that it works that way. And my evidence is, I had to drive out of town for a medical appointment the other day during the rainstorm, and I drove up 156, and it's still 2 lanes. How many years has that been? How many years has that been? Anybody know how many years it's been? We've been working on that one. And it's basically all settled, and there's nothing there. The reason I don't see the project that way is, and I'm a planner, but you can't plan for something that takes 35 or 40 years. It's silly. We're drawing up plans for a Wright Brothers plane, and by the time they build it, it's the jet age. We don't even know what that road's going to look like. But I can tell you this, it takes as long as it takes, plus whatever time we add on one end of it. And that's why we got to get moving. Because if it's a 30-year project and it takes us 2 years, it'll be a 32-year project. And if it's a 30-year project and takes us 5 years, it'll be a 35-year project. And we're talking about what it costs. We don't know what the construction costs are going to be 30 years from now, and we're not going to get that thing for 30 years. 30 years plus whatever time it takes us to get started. 1983, when I retired from the military in Salinas, they were talking about building the overpass at the Red Barn. Just got opened the other day. Okay. In fact, they told me that the Hatton Canyon bypass, everybody remember that one? There'll be freeway all the way from San Jose to Salinas with no entrances or exits or whatever. And here we are, we're sitting at 2015 here in a couple of weeks, and it ain't there. So this business of looking at this like a regular project of 5 years or 7 years where we can see what it's going to look like and we can see what it's going to cost and we plan for it. And I never object to that. You never hear me come up here and complain about that. That's the way you do that. But that's not the way you do roads in California. The way you do roads in California is you put a stake in the ground and you say, there's going to be a road here and we're going to pay for it somehow, and it's going to be some amount of lanes, and we put a number on a piece of paper. And we have no idea 30 years from now what that's going to look like, because we don't have any idea what the population is going to look like, and we have no idea what the technology is going to look like, whether we're using electric cars. And that's what I say. So I say we got to get going, because otherwise Caltrans sits around and goes, well, we're not even going to start because you guys aren't ready. And they don't start their famous 30-year calendar. And that's basically what it is now. It's a 30-year calendar for a major road. Nobody can show me a major road that's less. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else that'd like to address the board on this item? Seeing none? Any other questions of Mary? Okay, thank you, Mary. Go ahead and break for lunch.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what's about a half an hour, right? Is that what you're looking at?
At least.
Half an hour. And we have a 1:30 item out of our assessor's office that we have scheduled for public hearing, yeah. So,
Should we come back at 1, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to offer something up. There's a few people here that are here for comment on a closed session item. Can you open a closed session item, hear their comments, and then just listen, just so they don't have to spend all day? They've already spent half the day.
Yeah, we can open the closed session, we can take their comments, and then adjourn back into open session, and we'll deal with it. But that means I got to report out all the 8 closed sessions before we go there, so.
You have to report all of the items, or can you just take a crack at one?
Wait a minute, Mr. Chair, can we just make an amendment to the agenda, just to put that one closed item? You report that one closed item?
I suppose I could do just the ones that affect Measure J.
I make a motion
So
that
it'd
we
be 3 of
approve-
them.
I make a motion that we approve the items that are required to allow the members of the Measure A committee to speak today before 12 o'clock, and the rest just continue as regular agenda items.
I second.
So we're moving to item number 30.
Mr. Chair, I also would encourage, if we can, at least have the next item at 1 o'clock, no later than 1 o'clock. I wouldn't mind doing it now if we can do it now, and then break for lunch at either 12:30, and then come back at 1:30 for the next one.
We can do that, too.
That's up to, it's up to the board.
Okay, so let's take this.
So we'll do this
Let's take-
first, and then we'll call up for the next item, and then we'll break for lunch, come back at 1:30.
Okay, so we're moving to item number 30?
Yeah.
Is that, okay?
All right, so,
Take a vote, Mr. Chair.
You'll be next.
Oh, wait. Do we need a,
Speaker cards for 2 closed session items.
what's the other closed
yeah,
session?
there's actually 3 closed session items that are
Well, I think we
associated
just
with
need to deal
Measure
with
J.
with the speaker. So which other one?
30 and 30.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do.
That's part of it.
Okay.
So the closed session items on the Measure J issue are closed session item number 28, number 30, and number 32 on today's agenda.
Okay, so let's go ahead and.
All right, so the Board of Supervisors will
Oh,
now,
I'm sorry. Do we need a vote, or can I just do that administratively?
you can
So
do
it
it
was a motion.
administratively, but you made a motion, so you might as well vote
so
on it.
let's go ahead and take it. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right,
Don't forget that we're more powerful than you, okay?
okay. Matt? You report out?
Sure.
That was a joke, yeah.
Okay, the Board of Supervisors will now adjourn into closed session to discuss agenda items number 28, 30, and 32 on today's agenda. Agenda item number 28 is to confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the initiation of litigation pursuant to subdivision D4 of Government Code Section 54956.9 in one case. Agenda item number 30 is to confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivisions D2, E2, and E3 of Government Code Section 54956.9 in one case. The facts and circumstances justifying this closed session is the receipt of a letter from Citadel Exploration dated November 6, 2014, regarding the passage of Measure J, and the October 21, 2014 adoption of the Measure J implementing ordinance. And finally, agenda item number 32 is to confer with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to subdivisions A and D1 of section 54956.9 in the case of the Center for Biological Diversity versus San Benito County et al., filed in the Superior Court of California in the County of Monterey under case number M123956. Citadel Exploration, Inc. is the real party in interest in that case. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any speaker cards to address the board on these closed?
First speaker is Larry Rebecca.
For which item? For which item? Do we want to know which item they're addressing? I'd like to know.
Oh, we have a request to know which item they're addressing.
This is number 30.
I guess it's good afternoon to the board members. And this is mind-boggling to listen to your agenda, and I really want to thank all the members of the board for the hard work they've done this past year. It's really an eye-opener to come to board meetings to realize what the issues that you have to deal with. In regards to Measure J, all the districts in the county supported, every district supported Measure J. To the point where one district even had 73% of the constituents in that district, and that was District 5. So I see there's overwhelming support in the county for Measure J. Now, granted that with the passage has come some litigation problems, and we're here at San Benito Rising to support the county in whichever way we possibly can, and that includes financial support. We know that it puts the county in a difficult financial position. However, we have proven with the way we went about campaigning for Measure J that we do have the capability to organize people and to drum up support, not only financial support, but also legal support. There are other people that will speak on the behalf of Measure J, and they have more information as far as legal support potential and financial support. But once again, I think it is the legal obligation of the county, because the voters have decided that Measure J, they voted it in November 4th. So therefore, we do have a legal obligation to implement Measure J. And the overriding question, I understand County Council is very concerned with the legal obligation, and we are too. And we're not going to go away, and we're here with a positive attitude today, and we want to support the county, and we want to work with the county. And thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Andy Hishakaran.
Is this on item 30 or 32? Because I think I listed
30.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, members of the Board of Supervisors and staff. On item 30, item 30 is kind of an affront that it's even out there, that a company like Citadel can make the kind of claim that it's made against our county. The people of our county have the right to make decisions about what their future is going to be like. And the county has the right to make decisions about land use and about what things are compatible and incompatible. It's been tested in court in other states. We're a home rule state. And the people of our county, as Larry pointed out, voted very strongly in spite of being outspent somewhere between 15 and 20 to 1 by the oil industry. We had no TV commercials. We had no radio commercials. We weren't bombarded on the internet. We just talked to our neighbors and friends, and in spite of all the noise from the other side, we got 59% of the people of our county saying that we don't want these kinds of activities going on in our county. You can imagine what would the vote have been like if we hadn't been outspent 20-1. Probably would have been 75 or 80% if it was just a fair fight. So, speaking of a fair fight, I think we really are in a position of telling these folks, we don't want you here. We don't believe in your claim for $1.2 billion. I think it's contemptuous of democracy, and I think it shows, you know, there's a comment in both the Santa Cruz Sentinel and in the LA Times, a quote from Armin Nahabadian of Citadel Exploration. It stands out. I have it written in my house. It says, in a fair world, these people would be dragged out into the courtyard and dealt with accordingly. That tells you that this is not the kind of good neighbor and partner you want in our county, and I think you should take all efforts to say you got nothing coming from our county. Our people exercise their right to make a decision, and you don't have a legitimate claim against us. So I hope you'll put up a strong fight against their $1.2 billion claim and just simply say, we'll see you in court, if that need be. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mary Hishokaran.
Thank you for this opportunity. Today I would like to talk a little bit about heroism and the fact that Measure J is now a part of history. The voters of San Benito County did something heroic by passing Measure J, and this was despite all the odds that previous speakers have talked about, the campaign of misinformation and fear-mongering. In the eyes of many people in California and even in our nation, San Benito County is a hero by winning a David versus Goliath battle. The voters have shown that it is possible to win against the most powerful industry in the world, the oil industry, who have all the resources to defeat people in many communities. Now it's the supervisors' turn to do something heroic. All eyes are on you. In 50 years from now, this board will be remembered for very few decisions, but I think this will be one of the decisions that you'll be remembered for. The supporters of Measure J know well that the oil industry will use all their resources, every trick that they have, to bully our county, to get you to fold. Even if you have a very good case in this particular takings claim, even though our attorneys have told us that Citadel has a very weak claim and the county will probably prevail. The supporters of Measure J are here to say to you that we will be at your side if you defend Measure J. We are already assembling a legal defense fund for Measure J. We've raised $150,000 roughly during the campaign without spending all our time on it for about 5 months, and we think if we really focus on fundraising, we can do some significant fundraising. We've already been talking to 2 foundations that are very interested in helping. We've raised several thousand to pay the current legal bill that's due in January, and that is for our attorneys to write an analysis of the takings claim that was requested by Matt Granger. So we have already demonstrated that we are a strong supporter of the supervisors by currently paying that legal bill. We feel that the cost to the county will not be in the millions. You know, the oil industry is leading people in this county to believe that they could potentially bankrupt our county through legal actions. Our attorneys feel that if this county defeats some of these taking claims, like the one that's from Citadel, even if you defeat a few, the oil industry will not persist. Thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker is Anne Marie Sayers.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. From a Native American perspective, when we think of actions and when we make decisions, we think, what is the consequence of this decision 7 generations in the future? And then you'll know what your decision should be and or will be. With water is the blood of the earth. And if you do not represent the people that elected you, it's going to be very, very costly. 7 generations in the future, let alone 1 or 2 generations in the future. You do have the fiduciary duty to represent the people who elected you. And Maggie, 54% voted yes on J. Bertello, 63% voted yes on J. Rivas, 62% voted yes on J. Jerry, 51% voted yes on J. And De La Cruz, 73% voted yes on J. You must represent the people that elected you. Thank you.
Samuel Ramos.
Good afternoon, Chairman of the board members. And, you know, we worked real hard, Major J, to get this thing through, and the people have spoken. And I was very impressed with the board members that worked with the people, because we were always in contact, and I thank you for it. But, you know, I, like Anne Marie says, you know, speak for the Native America, you know, and the campesino and the Chicano, you know. And so, yeah, I think it's been said, and the people have spoken, and that's your constituency. And so, you know, I hope that that you would listen to the people, you know. And then these guys that want money, I mean, get a job, man. I mean, like, this is ridiculous. For me, it's hard to understand, you know, because we're in America, and you don't do that. I mean, just like we can just throw this claim on the people. That's not right, you know. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. I mean, this thing, it's proven in North Dakota, in the Arctic, in Alaska, the damage that has been caused. And the people are not going to stand for it. They're not going to stand for it in this country and in Mexico and in Latin America. And it's happening now, you know. So thank you very much.
Natasha West.
Good afternoon. I'm Natasha West, and I live in the county in District 1. And I'm here to comment on the threatened lawsuit by the oil company in the aftermath of the passage of Measure J. Now, despite overwhelming odds, the people of this county spoke loudly and clearly to preserve our land and water from exploitation and degradation. The Board of Supervisors, according to their oath of office, is now morally and legally obligated to defend this county against any and all threats to the law, which is part of the California Constitution now. Zoning and land use laws that were challenged by oil companies in New York and Pennsylvania eventually went to the highest state courts, where the people's rights were upheld and the oil companies paid the cost. Only 2 members of this board openly supported the People's Initiative. My supervisor, Supervisor Barrios, chose to align herself with the oil company, which is her perfect right, though the majority of her constituents voted for Measure J. Supervisor Dela Cruz declined to commit despite the fact that 72% of his voters resoundingly supported Measure J. It is time now to heal these divisions. I urge the Board of Supervisors to join together to support and uphold this law as they promised in their oath of office. If they do this, they will have the full support of the majority of voters in San Benito County. The people united will never be defeated. Thank you.
Thomas Bishop.
Thank you for having me here. I kind of climbed out of my deathbed this morning because I wasn't going to miss this for a beat. I'm really excited to be here because I really believe strongly that we're coming together as a partnership. Supervisors, the people, San Benito Rising, we all want to work together. We know that this is the epicenter of organic produce going out 1,000 miles around. The benefits of us being able to say that our produce is fracking free outweighs any amount of oil that could ever be taken out of these lands. We are currently holding a straight flush. It's a poker game with Citadel. They have one of a kind. We have a royal flush. Supervisor De La Cruz, you're holding the ace with a 73% vote of confidence. Those are the same people that'll say year in and year out, we want you to represent us. Let's get together. And it's time, all of us, think about that marketing. Think about the strength, the tax revenues that you want to bring here to bring in roads. Make that decision today. Thank you.
Hello there, Board of Supervisors. My name is Demetrio Pruneda. I'm a retired teacher and an active member of San Benito Rising, who created the Measure J so that we could protect our environment here in San Benito County. The citizens spoke loud and clear in the last election. Measure J passed with a whopping 58.9% of the votes cast. A whopping 17.80% more than those opposing the ban. This in spite of the fact that we were outspent 1.9 million to about 130,000. Imagine what the result would have been had we had unlimited money like the gas and oil companies. Imagine also how we could have used the a combined $2 million spent on fracking. We could have 2 millionaires here in San Benito County. We would have 4 families earning about $50,000 a year. Or we could have 20 families earning $100,000 here in San Benito County. Or we could have 40 families earning $50,000 a year, or 80 families earning $25,000 a year. And for me, jobs are very, very important. It is of paramount importance that we comply with the wishes of the San Benito voters. The whole world is watching. Let us not make a mockery of America, the democratic process, and the San Benito governance. The whole world is watching. Thank you.
Sarah Steiner.
Good afternoon. Thank you for switching the times around for us. I'm going to speak on behalf of Joseph Morris, who has submitted a letter to the Board of Supervisors. If there's any time remaining, I have a few comments to add, but this will basically be my reading of his letter, and I hope to present it to you in a way that shows the passion he has felt behind Measure J. Members of the board, on November 4th, 2014, the people of San Benito County, your constituents, went to the polls and cast their ballots for, among other issues, Measure J. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of Measure J. A resounding 59% of the same people you represent here on the board voted to allow conventional oil production and to ban fracking, cyclic steam injection, and matrix acidizing in the county. The result was an unequivocal rejection of the project that Citadel has proposed and is now incumbent upon you to defend that decision. On the face of it, Measure J was about high-intensity petroleum production and the potential hazards it poses to things that are of enormous value to us, namely our county's water, beauty, and fertile soils, and the economies that are built upon them. Barely beneath this surface lay an additional and just now as important value. We were voting to remind the oil industry, our leaders, and each other that our Constitution gives us the right to determine our future through the democratic process. The Citadel claim is just the latest chapter of their self-serving pipe dream, that they, rather than we, will determine what is right for San Benito County. I appreciate that it must be unnerving for you to hear about a $1.2 billion claim against the county. I am sympathetic of your feelings of being between a rock and a hard place. I want to encourage you to be strong. The United States was not built by weak-hearted people who buckled to the threats arrayed against them. The American dream is not won by the lazy or the uncommitted. The claim by Citadel is frivolous. You are not between a rock and a hard place. You are between a bully and a group of very passionate and creative citizens who have your back. The oil industry, with its $2 million of lies during the campaign, would disenfranchise your constituents in a heartbeat if they thought it would serve their interests. And they lost. Do I have a little bit here? The oil industry, with their $2 million of lies during the campaign, would disenfranchise your constituents, and they lost. The victory of Measure J has given hope to citizens across the county, for it shows that there is power in doing what is right. The resources will be found to help our county along this way. Your obligation is to do what is right, and in regard to Measure J, what is right is clear. Stay strong, defend it. We have your back. This is sincerely Joseph O. Morris. Thank you.
Okay, those for all of item 30. I have one for item 32. Andy Ishakaran.
Oh, for right now.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You already spoke.
No, that was Mr. Rebecca, my husband. Good afternoon. I know you're all sitting there, and you're all, here we go again with Measure J. Here we're going to sit down and listen to this. And you're probably just thinking, you know, I wish I had a check and said, here, you guys, go out there. You know, when Coalition to Protect San Benito County, when we started, don't think that we knew you were going to be sued. And Margie, that was one of her fears, that the county was going to be sued. We knew that. And did anybody know that we were going to win? This big oil company, this big company who has money? When I hear those words bankrupt, which I don't like to hear, where I've heard some of you use that, that shows fear. That shows the intimidation of the oil company. And what I'm trying to get to the point is that we work super hard, we're well organized, that I want you guys to support us, believe in us like I believed, and I knew we were going to win. I had faith, and I still have faith that we are going to beat this lawsuit. And I know some of you are just sitting here, oh, these people speak beautifully, and the nature and the water, but where's the money? Well, guess what? We are going to help you, but you have to believe in us, and you have to defend us. And that's what I'm asking you. I knew there were only 2 supportive of us, and some of you who were kind of like this, not sure. Well, I hope now that you will have faith, and I will have faith on you, that we are going to work together, and we're going to fight together, because this is the beginning of the fight, and it's going to go on, and we're going to be there. So if you don't want to hear us and we're getting up speaking, we just, let's work together, and I know we're going to win. Thank you.
Okay, Andy Hisha-Karan on item number 32.
Yes, again, Andy Shah, Coron, from Ricardo Drive in Aromas. Item 32 has to do with the lawsuit that was filed by Center for Biological Diversity in regards to the original granting of the exploratory permit to Citadel Exploration. I think that permit was a mistake at the first, and I understand how that mistake could have been made. The company was offering a lot, and it was making a lot of reassurances that if anything, if there was any problems, they would indemnify the county. It would be on them, not on you. And that doesn't seem like that's been very solid in terms of that commitment to indemnify you. There's now been a decision of $260,000 against the county. And I know, and I've talked to the attorneys from the Center for Biological Diversity, that their goal is not to get a lot of money out of our county. It's not to bankrupt our county. They actually are very anxious to work with our county to help stop this kind of what they think is environmentally threatening drilling practices. And I think that the important thing right now is, one, to try to press Citadel to fulfill the obligation, because in the 3rd provision of the indemnification agreement, it says that if they don't owe up to their responsibilities, that they don't have a permit, that their permit is basically null and void, and it's already not in a very good standing after the judge told them that they had no permit because they hadn't done proper environmental review. So I think you should push to get as much of the money as you can from Citadel or from their backers in the oil industry. They seem to have friends in the larger oil industry community. But also to realize that it's time, since the people of our county have said we don't want this project, we don't want this kind of drilling activity here, to join with the groups that are going to fight to keep Measure J secure and intact, to send a signal to the larger environmental law community that you're on board, that you've heard the people, and that you're ready to work with all those groups to put on an effective defense. Because we know if there's an effective defense leveled, you'll get broad support from people who don't want this kind of development, and you'll prevail, because that's what's happened in other states where people have stood up for the rights of the people to keep out these kinds of activities. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to address the board on these closed session items? Seeing none.
We need to adjourn out of the closed session and adjourn back into the regular session.
Okay. So,
Do we need a motion for that?
Wait, do you just need to report out that
I don't report out until after we go into closed session.
Okay.
So we've opened up the closed session for items 28, 30, and 32. We've taken public comment on those closed sessions. Later, in this afternoon, we will be going back into closed session to discuss those agenda items in closed session, but for the moment, we're going to close session and go back into open session so we can continue on with the regular agenda.
So what do you need from me? Do you need me
I
to
just-
declare that we reconvene from closed session?
Yeah, just that we close the closed session and reconvene in open session.
We have closed the closed session and we're reconvening into the open session. Mr. Espinoza?
All right, so I want to leave this up to the board. Tyler is on a time schedule. If it's possible, he would like to do the presentation for the Optimity report to your board. If not, we'll have to wait till after lunch. I mean, that's ultimately it. It's up to the board what they want to do at this point.
I guess I have a question of Matt. What I read on the afternoon open public hearing is that it is scheduled for 1:30 or soon thereafter, so we're not constrained to opening it at 1:30, are we?
No, but traditionally, we try and have the hearing around the time that we've noticed it, because people come at 1:30 expecting to have a hearing. So, sure, do we have 5-10 minutes? Yeah. Do we have an hour or two?
No, I understand
No,
that.
yeah.
So if we go a little bit longer than a half an hour, we can reconvene at 1:45 or something. Unless we're eating the cold pizza from yesterday.
I think
We'll be lucky with that.
All right, well, let's get on to whatever item it is. I don't have it.
All right.
Item 22.
Okay.
Can we order some pizzas? Have them delivered? Do I need to, it's locked, it's locked.
All right.
What's the password, Denise?
Need a
It's
password?
locked up again.
Janet, do you need 5 minutes?
I gotta go run upstairs too.
Yeah, okay, why don't we take a 5-minute?
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, there you go.
Okay, now how do I find my flash drive? It didn't pop up. I got it back up, but now I can't find my flash drive. Last time it just popped right up. There we go.
I gotta come back here.
How to adjust the color?
proprietary and confidential.
Not everybody knows that. It's on all of our documents. All right, so rush order. You got some frozen ones that you can throw them back away? That's what I said, get the frozen pizza in the microwave and we're good to go. Yeah, well. Yeah. So what did you do? You ordered food? Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to go? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, we're on our next item on our regular agenda, item number 22, and this particular item is an item that came actually from your board. Actually, it was a discussion item at a board retreat in the beginning of this year. And what we wanted to do is evaluate the organization and look at where we're at from a performance perspective, as well as just an organization perspective. So during the process, as you recall, we had Margie Riopel on staff. She actually went out and went out to bid, and basically we did hire Tyler through Optimity. Tyler Covey is here right now. He's going to be presenting to your board. We actually hired them on board to do an evaluation of not our entire organization, but part of our organization. And today what we do, or we have, and before you right now, is just kind of the review. And a PowerPoint presentation was also put together a large packet that you also have, and there should be some copies in the back for the public. So what we want to do is just go ahead and hand this over to Tyler right now, and he can go ahead and start off with his presentation. Tyler?
Great, thank you, Ray, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, fellow supervisors, county staff, and members of the public. My name is Tyler Covey, and I'm a partner with Optimity Advisors. And as Ray mentioned, we were retained to conduct a review of 5 of the departments in San Benito County. And today what I would like to present to you is an executized summary of the results of the review, give you, and I'll go through the agenda in a moment, but I really want to encourage you to read the entire 85-page report because it will fill in a lot of the details, a lot of the perspectives, give you a better perspective of the amount of effort and work that went into it. But I really want to give special thanks to Ray and Denise and Dina, as well as all of the department heads and the 25 staff and directors that we interviewed throughout the process. Although I think it was uncomfortable for some of the staff, we felt like they were all very cooperative, very forthcoming, and very helpful, and we couldn't have completed the review without them. In fact, we did allow the county and the staff to have 2 full reviews of our final report, and they were generous in their feedback, and in many cases we've incorporated their feedback within the report, and it's important to note that that's a very strong part of our quality control process to make sure that the staff who are most closely aligned with the work have the opportunity to read the results and to provide their opinions and feedback. So if we move to slide 2, this is just a little agenda on what I'd like to go through with you today. I want to give you just a little quick overview of who we are and the team that we utilize to conduct the review. I'll give you an overview of the approach that we took for conducting the review. Part of the review included looking at some of your peer counties, and so I want to share that information with you. And then I'll walk through the recommendations that we have for each of the 5 departments, and we've again kind of executized them here, and I encourage you again to go back to the full report to get the entire context. And then I'll leave you with some contact information in case you have any follow-up questions. We're happy to continue to support the county as you move forward in implementing the recommendations. And certainly the county is due for a lot of commendations, having weathered the recent storm, weathered the Great Recession. And while we were calling out great sweaters, I wanted to mention Joe's socks too. I thought those were worth calling out. Good job there. So Optimity Advisors, we are an international operational consulting firm. We have about 300 professional advisors that come from all levels and all industries. And the slide here really tells you a little bit about our mission and our principles. But really the key thing I want you to think about when you think about Optimity Advisors is that we get involved when our clients are going through transformations that aren't necessarily permanent, so you don't need to staff up to deal with the transformation, but you're implementing a new product or a new program, or you're looking for ways to streamline your efficiency, your effectiveness, your processes. That's when Optimity Advisors is at its best. The next slide gives you just three of our team members, and we did have a much bigger team. We also had Ashley Wilborn, who helped with the interviews, and Omar Hamwi, who oversaw the peer review process. I'll talk mostly about myself here since I'm the speaker, but Ken Barrett is our consulting practice leader, and I have Bianca with me today, and she was instrumental in finalizing the report and going through the quality control process. But my background is going back almost 20 years. I've worked with hundreds of agencies as either vice president, CFO, COO, or mainly as a consultant, and spent many years with the California State Auditor. That's where I cut my teeth in California government, and where I kind of got my passion for helping California government entities and seeing lasting changes. But I've parlayed that into working with a couple of national consulting firms where I've been able to work with government entities around the country, which has been refreshing to see different approaches, different ideas, and so I've seen an awful lot and worked in an awful lot of different areas of government. In terms of our approach to the review, we really had three main goals for the review. Number one was to identify all of the mandated and non-mandated services that the county was involved in. And the hope there was that if there were any non-mandated services, that we could take a closer look at those and determine whether those were services that we wanted to continue, or whether they might provide opportunities in the future should you experience other fluctuations in your budget situation, that we might be able to utilize to shift some resources. The second part of it was to conduct a peer review, to look at other counties in California that were similar to San Benito, to see if there were any anomalies or any best practices or ideas that we could garner from those organizations that would be of benefit to San Benito. And then probably the most labor-intensive part was getting our boots on the ground. We visited almost all of your facilities. As I mentioned, we spoke to more than 25 staff about what was working well, what wasn't working well. We gathered a number of documents and tried to kind of triage the information that we gathered from best practices and the peer entities, and looking at your laws, rules, and regulations, along with documents and input from the staff. We triaged that and tried to come up with some meaningful recommendations that would help the county move forward. But so we started before we hit the ground. We did a lot of research online, pulled as much information as we could, so that at least we hit the ground with some knowledge of San Benito, because as has been said many times, if you've seen one California county, you've seen one California county. And that goes for other counties and municipalities throughout the country. There are just so many different structures and ways of doing things that we really wanted to get to know San Benito before we landed. But then we had an entrance conference with the administration to hear what their priorities and main concerns were, and then we embarked on a 2-week period of just intensive hour-long interviews with staff in each of the 5 departments, and from the director level and down to the staff level in some cases. After that, we were able to start that triage process that I talked about, where we kind of consolidated all of the information, tried to make sense of it, and come up with some ideas and recommendations. And then we prepared our draft report, and again, we circulated that draft report through the administration and gave each of the departments 2 opportunities to read through the report and to provide feedback. So this slide here just gives you a quick look at the peer counties that we selected, and we even endeavored to look at some of your adjacent counties, but didn't have as much success in looking at those counties, primarily because of the huge difference in demographics. But our comparison factors were population and income and annual budget And what we did, when you read the broader report, you'll see that for each of the departments, we outline what the departments, or how each of the departments compares to each of the peer entities in terms of budget and staffing. And then we try to highlight any nuances. It wasn't always an apples-to-apples comparison, and so we did have to make some adjustments in some cases. For example, in Health and Human Services, most of the peer counties include behavioral health, and so we had to make some adjustments in that category. So just to give you a quick overview of, before I jump into the 5 different departments, we kind of lumped the overall recommendations into 4 categories. What we found is that the county has a number of very small departments with very small spans of control, and the movement around the country is really to streamline and consolidate and move towards, you know, more super agencies. And the primary reason for that is for cost savings, but there are a number of other reasons behind that. You can increase spans of control and reallocate resources. You can share administrative resources. It gives you a lot more flexibility in your staffing. You can cross-train and move staff back and forth as volumes fluctuate between different services that you provide. Oftentimes it can help you to streamline and coordinate your activities better, your policies and procedures, helps to build culture, and I can go on and on about a lot of the benefits of consolidation. And we do outline those in more detail in the report, but I'll walk you through in a few minutes here some of our recommendations on where we think those consolidations should occur. And of course, staff had varying opinions about the consolidations. Some of them are uncomfortable, they're new, they're recommendations. As I mentioned, there are numerous different structures that we saw out there, but based upon the feedback that we got from staff and the potential synergies, I think were one of the key things that we were looking for. The potential synergies that can be created through some of these consolidations was really the driving force behind the recommendations that we have for you. Because of the budget situation that the county has been in, when we compared you to your peers, almost across the board, we found that you were staffed far lower and your budgets were far lower than your peer counties, which indicated to us, and after talking with staff and hearing about backlogs and workload issues, it became real clear that, you know, as the county improves, that looking at, you know, those critical areas and where those backlogs are occurring should be a top priority to increase budget and staffing, and I know you've already done some of that as well. And then finally, throughout the county, and I think it's probably a symptom of being so short-handed, but there aren't a lot of formalized policies and procedures out there that are easily accessible for staff, and not that we're big policy and procedure wonks. We've seen cases where there are great policies and procedures and nobody follows them, and seen other cases where there are no policies and procedures and things run very well. But when you look at a county as small as yours, where you have some real high concentrations of knowledge, sometimes losing one person can mean losing a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge, and so not having those practices documented represents a real risk to the county. So it's an important thing for you to look at, to prioritize those key areas where you have concentrations of knowledge, so that you can begin that kind of succession planning process. But also, too, beyond that, there's a whole nother level that we'd like to see the county get to where you can manage the county on a more proactive basis. And what I mean by that is, when we were talking with the departments, we didn't find a lot of workload, staffing, or performance metrics that we're leading and guiding the decision-making processes. And there's a huge opportunity within the county to, especially as you move to the new ERP system and you're going to have better data and information available, to start to move towards those kinds of dashboards that will help you to identify when you need to add staff, when you need to reallocate staff, when things are getting behind. And it should be transparent. These can be reports that come to the board that can be easily read and understood. And then you can start asking the tough questions like, why are we, behind 1,100 applications, and what are we doing to, we can get the collective brain trust involved in helping to manage the critical challenges of the organization. So I won't go over the descriptions. I think you all know what your agencies are. So let me just jump right into the chapter on the Health and Human Services Agency. And the Health and Human Services Agency was definitely our biggest challenge. Having a new director, Jim, he's done a great job at coming in and taking a real critical look at how the department is organized, and he's already made a number of changes, and in fact, I think he's already implemented some of the recommendations that we've made. So it was kind of like hitting a moving target, but for us, we really had to draw a line in the sand in order to make a peer comparison. We didn't have updated information for all of the peer counties, so when you look at our report, you'll see it's based on the full prior year results, and I think that's a good baseline, and will help you to evaluate how some of those changes that Jim has made in the future. But one thing that at the top of the list there, we're recommending that you merge the Behavioral Health Department into the overall Health and Human Services Department. And again, that's to, bring all of the like services together to create synergies, to create better communication and coordination, and all of the benefits that we outline in the report. And there also is certainly a natural synergy between the CalWorks and Community Services Workforce Development departments, and we know that that's something that's been considered for consolidation in the past, and we think that now would be a good time to do that, especially because both of those organizations have suffered from losing staff. By combining now, they can take advantage of cross-training and sharing of administrative resources, and we think there are a lot of efficiencies to be gained there. And the third item, they're merging the environmental health within the Community Resources Agency. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're calling the Community Resources Agency in a minute. In fact, I have a slide that shows you what it might look like. But basically, we're recommending, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're recommending kind of a super agency that will consolidate a number of the smaller departments into what we've seen out there in at least one of your peer counties, as well as other counties around the country. And then finally, moving the EMS department under public health. And because of the number of natural disasters and threats of natural disasters around the country, there has been a movement to consolidating all of those emergency response type of organizations. And so, EMS is a very small department, and we think that there would be some great synergies created by merging those two departments.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, and that particular item actually came before your board at our last board meeting. That was Phase 2 organization within Health and Human Services. So that actually did take place already. Just so you're aware of that.
That's great. See, as I mentioned, the organization hasn't stopped moving forward just because we stopped writing, and it makes us very happy to see that folks are either taking their own ideas or our ideas to heart and trying them, and we certainly encourage you to try them, and if they're not working out as intended, then certainly look out for other opportunities or combinations that might work. But Seeing as time is of the essence here, I'll let you read through the rest of the recommendations, but they really center around